sandwich and he'll be over here with us momentarily. Clarissa, all Pratt members are here and it's 6 o'clock. Can you let any members of the public into the meeting?
Yes. And we are now recording.
And we're recording. Great. All right, recording has begun. Thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. We have a quorum of Pratt members present, so I will officially call the meeting to order. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion.
Would anybody like to second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion for this motion to approve the agenda? All right. All right, motion passes, agenda is approved. I will now turn over to the director for future board items.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Folks on Alley Roads, I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation, and this part of the meeting is where we give the board members an overview of the next 3 months so they know what is coming in their work. And I will call out a few changes for you. So normally in August, we take you on a capital improvements tour and we hop in a van and we show you on the ground and talk about the projects underway for capital. With support of the chair and vice chair, we're proposing an amendment to that, and that we actually instead have a study session during that meeting to talk about the recreation membership structure and fees. And you're going to get a preview of that tonight with Scott and his team. Other things going on in August, you'll see we start our yearly cycle of Clean Week and shutdown closures, where we do a week-long closure of the recreation centers to do significant maintenance work that can't happen when people are in the building because it's messy, dirty, smelly, all of those things. And so East's happened this year on spring break. South, we closed a few weeks ago because we reallocated funding and we're spending a significant amount of money to extend the life of that building to give us time to plan for the future. So the facility is closed through Labor Day currently, and the pool will open in October. And so our thanks to the community for dealing with that. We know that people have their favorite places and they're going somewhere else isn't always easy, but the other facilities are open. We also have the maintenance closure for North coming up for 1 week. And then in your consent agenda, we talked about some other updates with the rec facilities. As it relates also to the council agenda, this is where we've been talking to you about the budget since April. And we start talking to city council in September. So we've highlighted on your future board items some of those important conversations with city council. On September 11th is their first chance to discuss the city manager's proposed budget. Right now, and in fact, these very minutes and about every minute this week, the city is having internal conversations to support our city manager's effort to synthesize the budget. She will share her proposed budget with city council and the community later in August, and they'll have that study session on September 11th. They'll discuss it at a first and second reading in October, at which time we anticipate that they would approve a 26 budget and we'll begin planning to implement it. Those are the highlights. Everything else is spelled out in the future board items. So I'll pass it back to you.
Any questions on future board items? All right, very good. And then we'll move on to public participation. I'd like to start by proposing we do have some additional speakers tonight. We have 5 that have signed up. We have 8 that would like to speak. So if there's no objection by the board, I'd like all people who would like to speak tonight to speak. Any objection? All right, great. Sure, what's the name? Okay, that gives us 9 signed up. Thank you, Lori. Okay, so this portion of the meeting is for members of the public to communicate ideas or concerns to the board regarding parks and recreations issues for which a public hearing is not scheduled for later in the meeting. Tonight there is no public hearing scheduled. So during this public participation time, the public is encouraged to comment on the need for parks and recreation programs and facilities as they perceive them. All speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Depending on the nature of your matter, you may or may not receive a response from the board after you deliver your comments. The board is always listening and appreciative of community feedback. I believe Bernie is going to present the additional guidelines tonight.
Well, thank you all for being here. The city has engaged with community members to co-create a vision for productive, meaningful, and inclusive civic conversations. This vision supports physical and emotional safety for community members, staff, and the members of the crowd. as well as democracy for people of all ages, identities, lived experience, and political perspectives. If you'd like to read more about this vision and the community engagement process, you can visit the URL that is displayed on the screen, or colorado.gov/services/PR/productive-atmospheres. If you all remember the URL. And the speakers all have 2 minutes. 3 minutes, excuse me. The city council will enforce the rules of the quorum found in the Boulder Revised Code section 16B, including participants are required to sign up to speak using names they are commonly known by, and individuals must display their whole names before being allowed to speak online. Currently, only audio testimony is permitted online. We're glad you're all here in person. No attendee shall disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct of any council meeting in a manner that disrupts the business of the meeting. This also includes failing to obey the lawful order of the presiding officer to leave the meeting or refrain from addressing the council. There's maybe one person at a time at the podium unless an accommodation like an interpreter is required. All remarks and testimony shall be limited to matters related to city business. No standing in or otherwise blocking the aisles in violation of the fire code or in any way that obstructs the vision or audio of other audience members. No signs or flags shall be permitted in the chambers, except for one sign held by a person measuring no more than 11 by 17 inches, which is held no higher than the person's face. So one more.
Last one. Yes.
No participants shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation against any persons. We ask that you not affix items to the podium or dais or walls or other surfaces in chambers. Signs, flags, or other items used to communicate must be held by one person when displayed. Obscenity, other epithets based on race, gender, or religion, and other speech behaviors that disrupt or otherwise impedes the meeting will not be tolerated. In-person participants are asked to refrain from expressing support or disagreement verbally or with sounds such as applause or snapping, with the exception of declarations. Traditionally, support is shown through American Sign Language applause or jazz hands.
Thank you, Bernie.
Thank you, Bernie. Clarissa, do you want to call on the first speaker?
Yes.
Also, do we have anyone online?
I will double check that. We do have attendees online. As they come up, we'll see if they are online or in person.
Okay.
Okay. So the first one listed is Lynn Stein. I believe she's in person today.
This is the podium, right?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lynn Stein from Boulder. I've lived here over 30 years, and I would say I'm here to talk to you about Spruce Pool. I have spent every single summer day that I've been in town over the past 30 years at Spruce Pool. At least part of that time, I love the pool. I was dismayed to hear that it is closing early on August 17th. This has not yet been communicated to the public, but I don't even remember how I found out that I've been doing my best to let people know so that we can let you all know how we feel about it. I know I've had conversations or emails with many of you, and I appreciate it. This all comes out of love and devotion to the pool and such an incredible asset for us. And I'd really like to see it stay open later this year. There's a number of reasons that it's so important. It's very different, as you know, from Scott or North or the other alternatives. It's smaller and it's quieter. That does not mean it's empty. I'm not there all the time, but I'm there a lot for someone who doesn't work there. It's full, and a lot of people use it. You can usually get a lane to swim slowly or to water walk. The lanes at Scotty aren't that slow. And that's very important because a lot of the users at Spruce are older, are recovering from an injury, are disabled, might have cognitive problems. There's reasons why people need a pool that's calm and quiet, where they can get in their own lane and not have to worry about a super competitive triathlete bumping into them or turning into them. I love Scott also, and North. I really appreciate that we do have those pools, and I really appreciate the hard work that you all do. So none of this is to criticize what we have, it's merely to advocate for what I feel so strongly about. Another use case for Spruce is families with really little kids. Now, my kids grew up with Spruce back in the day when there was that big rickety slide, and it was super fun, and lifeguards had the sort of scary contest to see how fast they could go down. Now, that's the place for kids. Spruce is an awesome place for little kids. I'm not as tuned in to the families with little kids. I have talked to some of them. I don't know if any of them are online. It's just a much better place for little kids. It's not scary. It's also still really hot in August. I've talked to a number of people who come to the pool for really thin air conditioning. So for all these reasons, I really hope that you can see about keeping Spruce open. I did read in the package, there was a survey, I think it was called the DOT survey. I never saw that survey. I don't think it was at Spruce. I think there was probably bias if you ask people in a rec facility, which facilities do you like, and you don't have that survey at Spruce. Of course, the survey is going to be biased towards wherever it was that people did their dots. Finally, I just say Spruce is my third place. You all know what a third place is, right? It's a core setting for informal public life, offering connection, community, sociability. It can be thought of societal glue. They bind people together to construct communities. So let's keep Spruce going. Thank you.
I just want to remind folks out of respect for all voices to make sure everyone feels welcome, but if you want to show appreciation, you can show jazz hands. I know that was a lovely speech, but you did an excellent job, and it can show, it can be problematic when in reverse history, so thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. The next person listed is Greg Tucker.
Hello, I'm going to be brief. You've got important budget stuff to do, so I'm just going to ask, as a dovetail to what Lynn said, as you consider and prioritize projects and services to really remember aquatics, right? So look, you've heard 1,000 aquatic speeches up here, time after time. You've seen it in your surveys, you've seen it in your engagement, you've seen it in your word clouds. Aquatics is really, really important and underserved in this community. So I'm not going to beat you up with a big speech about it. I'm going to give a little bit of an idea that has a twist at the end. So stay with me and participate with me on this twist. So I'm Greg Tucker. I'm a community swim advocate, self-appointed. I'm also on the board of the Boulder Community Aquatics Coalition, okay, BCAC. Now, we mentioned the coalition a couple of times in a meeting just recently, so I wanted to give you a little bit of an idea about who we are and what we're up to, okay? So that's the perspective I'm going to speak from. I'm a longtime resident in Boulder. I've coached swimming at the Boulder Valley School District level for a long, long time. I'm not here representing them tonight. I'm also on the Play Boulder with the directors. And I'm also a member of the executive group that is on the Reimagine South Boulder Rec Center. And that's a group Boulder Community Aquatics Coalition supports. We think that lanes at South is important, but you know, look, we're not going to fix this problem until we build a pool. So that's what Boulder Community Aquatics Coalition wants to do. We're a nonprofit here in Colorado. We have a board, we have directors, we have some fundraising campaigns, filing for our nonprofit status. We represent about 3,500 different aquatics users across synchro swimming, high school swimming. We represent Boulder Aquatics Masters. We have about 7 groups. And we're beginning to be active in this community, and we have met with Allie and her group since February on a big idea. What's the big idea? Here's the twist. It's the solution. We want to build through a public-private partnership a premier world-class swimming facility. And so I wanted you to know who we are, because we're going to be active in the community, and I suspect we'll be in front of Pratt again soon. Thank you, Allie, for the work that you and your team. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. The next speaker listed is Deborah Fryer. Deborah in person. Let me check.
Hi, I'm Deborah
Okay.
Fryer.
She's right here. Yeah.
I'm Deborah Fryer and I am Lynn Stein's sister and I actually moved to Boulder because first school was open until October, the year that you renovated north. So I moved here because I love my sister and I also moved here because it is such an incredible school. And so I came here because I had double hip replacement and I was 3 months, I'm going to graduate 7:34. I was 3 months closed out and I did all my rehab in school this summer. So it really is important to me that I'm not gonna be blind. There are a lot of people in the community who have had neck surgeries, who have had ACL repairs. Jen has long COVID. Jen has, she's there every day with her belt on and from her. People who have spinal fusions who are swimming with snorkels. And I love swimming and I was afraid of getting run over by Scott. So everything, I apologize for the emotion, but I really care. That's cool. My fellow swimmers who do every day for 3 years. We're either rehabbing or we want to avoid future surgeries. We're active, we're athletic, we're not going to give up, and like it's a place that feels safe. And Scott really doesn't. It is a gorgeous pool, and he doesn't feel safe if you have injury. I haven't been there once this summer, and I did go there last summer. The second thing is that it still says on your website that the splash pass is good through Labor Day. And I know that the city of Boulder always finds a way, even when it seems impossible. We managed to keep the pool open during the pandemic, and we were able to swim throughout during the pandemic. Every summer, it seems like, we need to find lifeguards and somehow you find them. And so I believe that there is a way of what it is. Maybe it's fewer hours, maybe it's fewer lanes all the time or what it is, but it really seems like it's so important for the community, mental health, physical health, community health. All of us who are here, we've been sitting together for 20 years together. And so it's not more than just coming here to swim. It's, we support each other, we meal train with each other, and so it really feels like it is an important city function. The last thing that I would love to say, I know you say that you're going to be talking about the 2026 budget, and we would like to do whatever we can do as a community to ensure that Spruce is going to be open next summer. This is not a slippery slope towards, okay, let's just start
shaving it and shaving it and shaving it, and all of a sudden it's not available anymore. We'd really like to do whatever we need to do through our advocacy to ensure that Spruce remains open from Memorial Day through Labor Day next year. And that how important it is that all of us are coming here, whether we're rehabbing or whatever we're doing, because we care about the pool. And lastly, I just want to thank every single one of you for all the work that you do for aquatics and making sure that we have amazing pools in Boulder. This is a very unusual community that has access to pools. And you probably know that the other ones are going away, like CAC is going away, and you're it, Spruce is it. So thank you for the work you do.
Thank you, Deborah. The next speaker listed is Dawn Burkle.
Yeah, hi. I'm Don Burgle. Some of you may recognize me. I've spoken here before, or my predecessors. I'm the president of the Boulder Tennis Association. And I learned last week that the East Boulder Rec Center racket project has been put on indefinite hold. We don't have much more information other than the fact that the approved project has been put on some type of hold. So I'm not here to talk about the benefits of tennis or tell you why Boulder should have more tennis courts based on our population. Over the past 3 years, the city has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars studying the problem, hiring a consultant, writing a plan, working with PRAB, and then getting buy-in and approving a plan. And 6 months ago, the city publicly announced the plan in the Daily Camera, in a press release, and on a webpage. So you, this group, and the city already know the importance of the rationale for the tennis and pickleball courts. Instead, I'm here to tell you that as word of this trickles out, the tennis community in Boulder is going to be outraged that once again, the city has broken its promises to its constituents, dragged its feet, and delivered nothing.
For all the thousands of dollars and years we've worked together convincing you that Boulder deserves a tennis facility, we're back to nothing. I was fooled. I thought the city and this board had actually listened and made a real commitment. And I told my friends as such, but I should have known better. In Boulder, all we do is push paper and kick the can down the road. The community has received no detailed explanation of what happened or what the new plan is. And I've been told that funds have been reallocated and that the court costs came in higher than estimated. Now, why would that be? Maybe because Parks and Rec has been slow walking it for 3 years and inflation took its toll. So this group is on notice. We just received this information a few days ago. We're going to mobilize the community. We're going to rally the tennis and the pickleball people, send messages to city council, make an issue for candidates, and make our presence known here at Proud. And maybe one day, Parks and Rec and the city will actually keep the promise.
Thank you, Dawn. The next speaker listed is Judy Emery.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for letting me speak. I'm actually here to learn more than say much, but I am a board member with the Boco Pickleball Club. And as you may or may not know, we have over 600 participants in our club. And really like to keep our participants informed. So the first thing I want to start with is we are very appreciative and excited about the Tom Watson project. We saw the construction signs that are out there already announcing it. It's very excited to finally have our own designated pickleball courts. So with that, I'm here to say thank you and just would like to be informed if there's any changes to timelines, because I realize construction, there's a lot of variables, but if you could communicate with our board and we will communicate with our community. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. The second one though, of a concern is East Boulder. It's my understanding that it's on hold, what Don has just said. And we have worked very much with the city for the design, for input. In fact, Zach, our board member, and myself had a recent discussion with Tina. And in my mind, and I think in all of ours, it was a very constructive discussion. It wasn't to be critical. It was to say, there's some safety issues here. We really need to rethink some of these things. And so what I'm trying to say here is, please continue to talk with us as you continue to design and maybe modify what is or was the existing plan, so that, again, we can communicate with our constituents. And then finally, we really welcome ongoing information. As I said, we have 600 members, and we try to inform them of everything that's going on. They appreciate our work. They appreciate your work. And so if there's any timeline changes or project changes or nuances new to the projects, we would appreciate that ongoing communication. Because right now, kind of what Don said too, we're just hearing things hearsay. And so it would be really nice to have direct communication. And I know our board would be more than happy to sit down at any meeting at any time or on the phone. So again, appreciate all the work you're doing. It's all about communication. So thanks.
Can you help us with calling the folks that?
Yeah, I can.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jennifer Cornell.
I'm Jennifer Cornell, and I've lived in Boulder now for 20 years. And I've been going to this preschool every summer, almost every day. In 1997 and again in 2007, I had various accidents and I was paralyzed on the left side both times. And I mean, luckily I got back to moving and I got back to life. But my main source of therapy has been and still is this preschool. And since then, I've broken my hip, I've torn my ACL. And then a few years ago, I lost my fingers and half my toes to frostbite. But the spruce pool has been fantastic. The guards there are wonderful and they always help me find, like I can't swim without a water belt. But they always help me put it on and help me get the tools I need to use that facility. And so I love it. And I can't imagine any better way to do my therapy than that spruce pool. I love Scotty too. Thanks for finagling to you. I love it too. But it's not the same. Like Lynn said, just the atmosphere and the feeling at Spruce is so different. Like we're a community, we know each other, and we support each other. And even like I said, the guards and the people who work there are a part of that too. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful facility and a wonderful part of my rehab and part of my life. And I would love to keep it there. Yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer. Our next speaker is Tammy Miller.
I'm Tammy Miller, and I've been a lifelong swimmer. When I first came to Boulder, I was awed by all the facilities that are available. It's just been incredible. And I do have to compliment all the staff for a second, because every facility I go to, they're so helpful, they're so supportive. That's really an incredible resource. I also am going to put in a little bit of a blurb for South, being that I live on the south side, but the South Pool and Spruce Pool both have kind of the same vibes as far as being much more user-friendly for some of us who are a little compromised. I do have long COVID. Prior to that, I was a competitive swimmer. I was a triathlete. I've been swimming at Spruce for years. When I've gone to Scotty, I've watched swimmers swim over other swimmers who are a little bit slower, who are a little bit more compromised, and with the extra long lanes, a lot of swimmers can't keep up with that as some of us age or been dealing with health issues. The thing about Spruce is it's a community. It's really a family. Seeing the same people year after year after year because of the consistency. We're also dedicated to it. There was one year when the lifeguard situation was poor, and several of us who were former lifeguards, we were all volunteering. So recertify us, we'll take the course, we'll give our time up just to sit on the side for a couple hours. I mean, that's how much it meant to us already a couple of years ago. It's now with having to be on oxygen, it's a safer community. I need to have a way to set up my oxygen and stay on it while I'm working out, since I can't actually swim anymore. And all of these ladies and so many people there are so supportive, and it's because it is a quieter pool, more easily to get into, to have that lap lane, to have that quieter time where you're not dealing with kids and competitive swimmers swimming over the top with you. It's just much more easy. And then the locker room too is a little more user friendly for some of us who aren't trying to get into the big crowds in the other locker rooms. But the bigger part is community. We're also dedicated year after year after year. There's people I don't see but for the summertime. They're the pool peeps. I live in South Boulder, most of them are in North Boulder, but still look forward to the pool peeps that I know every year are there, and it is me. You consider.
Thank you, Tammy. The next speaker is Max Albert.
Hello, Max Albert. Thank you guys for this opportunity to express our feelings about Spruce. Like Deborah, I'm probably going to start crying. I just can't express how much this pool means to me. I'm a native son. I was born in Boulder Community Hospital right over here back in November '67. I learned how to swim at Spruce in summer of '69. When there was a gravel plant next door, gravel processing plant, and it didn't detract from the ambiance. It's just a wonderful place, and I've been swimming ever since. I swam on the Boulder Poseidon swim team growing up, and I love to swim. And Spruce Pool is just such a major part of the reason that I'm even still in Boulder. I love going to Spruce and swimming, particularly in the evening after work. Spruce used to be open until 8 o'clock PM. And it was so awesome with the sun setting, you know, as we swam and they'd turn the underwater lights on in the pool, and it was just so amazing. And I know I'm not alone in my deep feelings for this pool. And I love Boulder. I feel like, you know, just being even born here, I'm just a part of this place. And you know, Spruce is just part of what makes Boulder so alive to me. And to have this short season is almost painful for me, especially I've been coming back from some health problems that I experienced myself, that I thought I was just old and beat up, and I had so much pain in my body. It turns out I have rheumatoid arthritis, which the doctors are treating, and since Spruce opened, in this short time, I've lost 40 pounds. And they've also been treating a sleep apnea that I was diagnosed with in the hospital when I almost died of pneumonia, brought on by just continuing to work hard as I could, despite the fact that I was in so much pain. And Spruce has just been an instrumental part of my healing. I love the City of Boulder Recreation Department. You guys just do such a great job, and I just so appreciate everything you do, and thank you so much for letting me speak.
Thank you, Max. Okay, our final speaker tonight is Lori Misner.
Hi, my name is Lori Meisner. I moved to Boulder in 1995 and summer of '96 first moved to Spruce. I was at that time one of those annoying fast athletes, but health issues came up, was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So now I find myself needing a calmer environment to feel I can't handle the chaos anymore that comes with like a pool like Scott Carpenter when it's busy. I find myself overstimulated. Spruce has also been I've had 13 surgeries and shoulder replacement, so it's been like other people, it's a safer pool for trying to rehab. It's also a little warmer. I was in the freezing over at Scott Carpenter, not that they keep it cold, but I also can't handle drastic temperature changes. I taught my daughter how to swim there. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I feel it's like a safety place, you know, and it's actually easier to park. Parking at Scott Carpenter is a little nutty. And I get kind of freaked out, but yeah, I think that pool has so much value, and keeping it open in the summers as long as viably possible, I think is super important. And yeah, I hope we can work that. I was there for 17 years. If we can recertify me, you know, heck, I would help out. So oh yeah, and then anyone else who came here to speak for the pool, if you wouldn't mind standing up. Yeah, so even though these people didn't necessarily speak, these are all people, you know, who find that value of Spruce and opening, going as long as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Are there any other additional speakers online? Okay, thank you so much to all of our participants in public participation tonight. I will pass it over to staff to respond to comments. Sure, with comments.
First, I just, for the folks who have so much emotion about Spruce and about our department, as my team will tell you, I feel the same, right? Like we have an incredible team. We serve an incredible community who values health and well-being. I just really appreciate you all showing up tonight. I'm gonna first speak to about courts, and then I'm gonna let Scott say a little bit more about Spruce. So on the courts project, just this month's PRAB packet, we are trying to get information together about where we're at with projects. We do have a hiring freeze and 2 vacancies on the planning team. We just got approval to recruit for those. And so we're hoping to get things back on track. I find it disheartening after so much work together that would be accused of breaking promises and ill intent. I think that's unfair. I think that we are doing our very best to serve a community that has a whole lot of wants and funding issues that we have been trying to address for over a decade. We're going to be talking a lot more about that tonight, both with the budget and the recreation fees. I had emailed with Zach, your board president. I think he currently is today. So I think he's maybe a little more up to speed, and we'll just keep working to keep y'all up to date as we get folks hired and get new timelines with projects. We'll make sure the community is up to speed on getting those projects on track at both Tom Watson and East. And Tom, just to be clear, Tom Watson, the project is slowed down a little bit due to hazardous conditions at the bathroom that has to come down. So that project hopefully is just not going to be too far delayed, but coming soon. And then Scott Schuttenberg, our deputy director, can say just a little bit more about the work he and his team are doing to balance our budget.
Yeah, thank you, Ally. And I want to echo Ally's comments. And I greatly appreciate the passion that those that came out tonight and took their time out of their evening to come and talk with us about the importance of Spruce Pool and what it means to you. We certainly take that to heart and appreciate those comments and understand. I wanted to provide a little bit of context as to how we came to this decision as to closing Spruce Pool the 3rd week in August versus waiting until Labor Day to close the pool this year. As Ally mentioned, the city decided to reduce expenses and asked every department to cut back on expenses here in 2025 by about 5%, which for our department equates to a little over $2 million. It's hard to find that kind of money in a budget, and PRAB members know it's a very tight budget, very lean budget. And so staff were very creative and looked at multiple ways to find savings. Certainly the first thing we considered is equity. We also looked at the impact of the hiring freeze and our staffing levels. And we know that a lot of our aquatic staff are high school students that go back to school that 3rd week in August. And that greatly impacts our ability to provide services without being able to do additional hiring. And so we also looked across our system and said, where do we have duplication of service? Where do we have an alternative that people can go and still have the ability to swim and or to participate in whatever activity it is? And so by closing Spruce Pool about 3 weeks early, we're able to save about $25,000 this year. I know that doesn't sound like a lot of money, but we're looking at anywhere we can find additional resources. It also solves our problem with staffing. And so those staff that have agreed to stay on and will work with us into the fall, we'll be moving them to our other pools and those other locations to make sure that we can keep the other places open. So while it's very difficult to make this kind of decision, we feel like it's one of many programmatic areas that we have to have some reductions. And so I appreciate the fact that there are some concerns that were raised around a safe environment and ability to do rehab. And what I can promise you is that we'll go back and talk with our staff and figure out ways to be creative and to make sure that Scott Carpenter does feel like a safe place to come out and swim. And so, again, I appreciate all the feedback and comments. And I did also hear 2026 mentioned and potential cuts or not opening Spruce Pool in 26. That's not something we're considering at this time. And so we fully intend to operate all of our facilities next year. But we're also looking at creative ways to save money in 2026 as well.
I just had one note, Scott. Megan Loman is our recreation manager. And what I know Megan and I were talking earlier. So when a lot of the swim teams for the summer season end in early August and folks go back to school, there are many, many, many less lane reservations at Scott Carpenter for the teams. So they're going to make sure that school, when you look at that pool schedule for Scott starting Monday, August 18th, you'll see times from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. where all 20 lanes are open to the community. And I have high confidence that you would be able to find a lane to yourself, that you would find a calm experience. So 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Are those the times, Megan? Yeah. So if you have that flexibility and the gift of flexibility in your schedule, know that they're going to be much, much quieter times at Scott Carpenter. And Monday through Friday, we're in the 25-yard configuration. So there's 20 lanes available. And I have a lot of confidence just based on my own experience that you probably have a pretty calm experience once we go back to school.
Will you repeat that? Did you say Monday through Friday you'll be running it?
We'll send something out to the community. We are put something online around just publishing. Megan, I'll let you chime in with what you think the best way to handle that. And then
So we're working on communications just because it is more recent that we had to make the decision about Spruce, and that's why you're not seeing anything on the website or anything. And so we can, when we're updating that communication, I think what we can do is look at that schedule after August 17th. It is traditionally in long course Monday through Friday and short course Saturday, Sunday. However, with this change and knowing swim teams aren't there and kids are back at school, that's something that we can look at, right? Could we change the orientation? That's something that we can consider. I don't know the impact of that, so I can't promise that will happen at this moment. But I can tell you that I will look into it and see if just that change alone might help more people feel more comfortable at that location.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments
I
on
have a
that.
question for staff.
I was going to ask if the board had any input. If the board had any input for the public participants or for staff. Or any questions. Bernie, go ahead.
Thanks. Knowing that this is an extremely difficult position that the city government is in with the revenue shortfall, I'm just wondering if you can contextualize for us the savings that we're getting from closing the pool a couple of weeks early. What programs are we enabling to keep active?
Yeah, I appreciate that because a lot of you sitting down already know that I love Spruce Pool. It is my favorite place to swim also. And because of the redundancy and option at other facilities, it's actually, we're not taking swimming away. We're just taking away swimming at Spruce, right? In that savings, it is protecting. So we have limited subsidy for parks and recreation. That savings allow us to have no reductions for Expand, which is our program for people with disabilities. No reductions for YSI, which is our program serving youth living in low income. And we're not impacting any of our discounting or special programs for youth or for seniors. And so those are the priorities and the things we try and protect when we look at service reductions, because that's what the community tells us is most important every single time we ask. Thanks for that.
Excellent.
Any other comments or questions? I have one just regarding communication. Megan, you touched on this briefly. I know Lynn had mentioned that there was no real information out there about the closure. How will you be communicating it to the users of Spruce Pool?
Yes, so I have been working with our communications staff member and we'll get that online, posted on social media. And I don't know if we have an e-blast, an email blast coming up. But we will have it online and posted to social media, and there may or may not be a press release paired with some of the other things that we're already doing. Like we usually send something out about the annual maintenance shutdowns. And so I think we can not duplicate efforts, but make sure everything goes out in every way possible.
Okay. And then same kind of question for Scott, I think, or Allie, for the courts project with the being released to hire new people to get everything back on track. How are we planning on staying in touch with the tenants association?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. So I have several meetings over the next couple of weeks to work with Mark Davison, our senior planning manager, and the planning team to look at, as folks get up to speed, what does it look like? So some of the contracts we have in place are limping along. We have many projects that are impacted by the vacancies that we have on the planning team. And so what does it look like as we support onboarding new employees to get the projects? I don't have a timeline, but I expect that when we come to you in August, we'll have more information and we'll be sharing with the board and the community, just like we wrote in the consent agenda this month, that as we have more information on timelines, and certainly BOCO Pickleball, Boulder Tennis Association, we rely on them to help get accurate information out to folks. And I really appreciate Zach reaching out with questions and saying there's these rumors and projects are permanently on hold and they're going away, and none of that is true. And so I appreciated the opportunity to clarify directly with him and to provide information. So I think long story short, as we have updates, we will try and keep the PRAB and the community in projects. One of our vacancies had been in communications. That position was filled in early June. And so we are way behind on public updates on our web pages. And that is something we're working to get caught up on now.
Okay. Anything else?
I have one, Jenny. Was an option of reducing the hours at Spruce a possibility? Or why would that not work?
It's a great question, and I will say that we certainly looked at cost savings and trying to establish if we shut the pool down versus if we just reduce the hours, we're still having the same expenses for chemicals and heating it and those kind of things. So closing it 3 weeks early actually allows us to really have quite a bit more in cost savings and fully commit to moving our staff to the other locations so that we can make sure that those hours are not reduced at those other locations.
Okay, thanks, Scott.
If we could, the staff that was at South Boulder Rec, how are you reappropriating them to facilities while we were in this break?
So that was the first thing that we did to reduce the impacts of the hiring freeze, was the fact that because half of South's building was going to be closed regardless, could we take advantage and be able to move construction a little bit more quickly by closing that whole building. So that staff had already been redeployed. Spruce was the next thing that was no longer going to be possible to operate based on the hiring freeze.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your comments and questions. And as always, thank you to the public for participating today. We love when you come and talk. And for my purposes, the fact that everybody stayed 3 minutes and you didn't make me stop you makes me feel really, really good. So thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciate it. And please come back. Yeah.
I know that on your September 22nd meeting, I believe you have like a review of the aquatics, the summer outdoor aquatic session. That's on Erev Rosh Hashanah, which impacts a number of us. And I know at the end of your meeting, you're talking about rescheduling that meeting. So just to let you know that that's something I'm very interested in. And if you reschedule it, that'd be great.
I'll make a note. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our consent agenda. We do have approval from our previous minutes, or let's see, give me 1 second to pull back up the agenda. Okay, would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes from our previous meeting? We got to move? Second? Okay. We have a second on the consent agenda, approving the minutes from our June meeting. Are there any questions regarding the minutes? Okay, hearing no opposition, the motion passes. The minutes from June are approved as posted. We will, and then we do not have any extra minutes. So we have our next section is Parks and Recreation Operations Update. Are there any questions or comments on our update from the director?
But I also have something on you first.
We do. Ready to go? Can you, I was curious first about the beverage licensing meeting on July 30th for the alcohol liquor license that's going to be proposed. Is that something that you think will be approved this year, or will it be next year for the reservoir?
There was a community meeting a week and a half ago. My understanding it went very well. Initially, there was a petition that went around the neighborhood, and I believe there were 32 individuals that had said they would not be in favor. Some of those after the community meeting had come forward and said they would like to attend this meeting and have changed their minds and are very supportive. There was clarity in that meeting that the liquor license application only allows them to serve alcohol until 9 p.m. And so we are very optimistic that this Wednesday at 3 o'clock will be the hearing. We're very optimistic that that would go through and be passed.
Great. Okay. All right, and then my next question was regarding the poll that is in the report that North Boulder Recreation Center access, or North Boulder Rec seems to have come up on top of that list. I was curious how that poll was distributed or.
Sure, the Recreation Center feedback was sent out in our community e-blast newsletter. So, and then we also had on-site community boards at all 3 of the recreation centers. So that was sent out to, I think it's 58,000 people. And it was also sent out on social media.
Okay.
And
I was a little surprised that North came up first.
It kind of tracks, North is actually closest geographically to most people that live within the city of Boulder limits. And it gets our most usage across all the facilities.
My last question is, can you tell me the economic impact of having to purchase the electric landscaping equipment?
Yeah, so we were able to secure several grants from, in partnership with climate initiatives and Boulder County's air quality. I forget the exact division. And so and several of our teams were already well on their way, over 90% with all electric equipment. And so the total impact to us, I believe it was less than $20,000. I know that's a lot of money. It's a significant amount of money, but when you look at the hundreds of pieces of small equipment we have that align with that less than 10 horsepower requirement, it's a pretty impressive indicator of how far along the way we were already with electric equipment.
And are we 100% electric on that?
Correct.
Okay.
As required by
state regulations.
But things that are less than 10 horsepower, there's a few exceptions, but yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for the feedback. Those were my questions.
I appreciate all the work that the government's done to manage the budgetary situation. I know it's been like very challenging, and I know unexpected mid-year. And we certainly, I think we all appreciate the difficulty of making decisions to take away people's access to recreation. Obviously, it's the opposite of what we all try to do. With that in mind, I was just wondering if you could talk to us a little bit more, just stated here in the meeting, a little bit more about the decision to invest in the South Boulder Rec Center after we previously said we weren't going to do that.
I think it really just goes down to all of the work that we are doing to support health and well-being in Boulder. It's pretty clear our community does not desire less indoor square footage for recreation. And when we look at as part of the future of rec work and the needs assessment on a per capita basis, we want to maintain at least indoor square footage. And given where we are with our funding, given the work of the next 2 years with the long-term financial strategy, we decided it was worth it to buy some time, 5 to 7 years, so that we were moving away from, I wish there was a more official way to call it, but I call it the cross our fingers strategy, right? Like we were just wishing every single day that we didn't have a failure of a massive infrastructure system at the South Boulder Recreation Center. And so this investment will buy us time so that we can plan for the future and not be making reactive decisions or emotional decisions. And we've got time to really thoughtful about the community's indoor recreation needs.
And do I understand correctly that the funding for that project was basically reallocated from the It's from the Fairview, excuse me, from the Pleasant View.
Pleasant View access improvements. And so we are requesting funding for that money again with the 26 budget cycle. We had been allocated that funding in 22. And the project, we just have no Pleasant View. I'm thinking of Tom Watson. Pleasant View is not that old.
22, 23.
Yeah, so we have the designs. It's ready to go when we get funding, and what we needed to make this happen with this window with the South Boulder Recreation Center was money that was approved and allocated, and that project made the most sense based on planning timelines, and we'll be requesting funding for Pleasant View with the 26 budget development.
Last one for me, you already spoke this earlier about just to make sure that we all understand the answer. As of this moment, we don't know where the funding will come from for the East Boulder part of the court system improvements, right? Or did I miss?
There's funding current, that project, another rumor, and the project has not been defunded. There's, I think, about, Jackson will correct me, I'm gonna round, it's about $2 million allocated for the project-ish. 1.8, it's
2.2, 2.3-ish.
There's money allocated for the project. It's new construction, so we are annexing property to make that possible. The conversion of the existing tennis courts into pickleball is not as simple as we thought it would. We have not had time for our expert landscape architects to dig into the designs and see what's possible. And so until we get that capacity, that's what we're telling folks, is that we need time to dig in and figure out how to make it possible. The project is still funded. We're committed to figuring it out. We still believe it's an awesome and elegant solution to meet the needs of both tennis and pickleball. And we think it's possible. We just need to figure it out and figure out there likely will be a funding gap. And my hope is that, you know, there's a lot of folks who've said we would love to contribute. We would love to support. We'll likely be asking.
Excellent.
I realize we did that a little bit backwards. Is there anything you would like to say before we get to questions about the consent agenda?
No, you gave me the opportunity. Thank you. We did. I appreciate it. Thanks, Jenny.
Great. Any questions from anybody else? All right. Action items. We have no action item for this evening. So we will move on to matters for discussion.
Yeah, I'm going to introduce this item. So Jackson Height and Stacy Hoffman are here to talk about the 2026 operating budget. You'll hear afterwards about recreation activity fees. We'll talk a little bit about CIP. There's no changes. And I want to just acknowledge what a strange budget year it is for us. And especially for the new PRAB members to understand, this is not normal. Normally you would see fund financials and you would see lots of numbers, and we're not working in that world in this moment. We are working with ranges of numbers. We are in uncertainty as we go into executive budget meetings this week, because the city manager, I really appreciate the approach they're taking of, they have a bunch of different options from across the city. And just like we try to do to minimize impacts on priority populations, to minimize impacts on large segments of the community, they're having to balance that now. And so this team has, I think, developed 5 different budgets at this point for 2026, and they're working really hard. And just, I wanted to take a moment to appreciate the work and leadership of Jackson and our budget team, and Stacy and her expertise, and all of our teammates in operations, because we do keep asking them, like, we have not gotten there with the 5%, and what else could we do? I have asked them to look for surgical reductions in services, because I'm not interested in just skimming across everything. We do not have fluff in our budget. We have been saying for over 10 years that without additional funding, we will be reducing services, and we've met that moment. And so what I am grateful for is that because of the long-term financial strategy and the work that City Council has prioritized, we are perfectly poised to have the conversation with the community about the level of service they want and the level of service they're willing to pay for. Right now, the two do not match. So with that, I'll hand it over to Jackson. I just wanted to set the stage a little bit and appreciate everyone for an incredible amount of work trying to balance a whole lot of competing interests.
I'll echo Ellie's comments. Stacy's actually going to cover the operating budget tonight, and I think that I just wanted to reiterate, this is a preview of what's coming to you next month. Based on your role in the charter, you do have to recommend the department operating budget and then approve the CIP from the Permanent Park and Recreation Improvement Fund. That these numbers are close, they're not right. We will have more information from the executive budget team this week, so we look forward to sharing that with you next month. And we'll just walk you through where we are today. As Ali said, very abnormal year. We typically would have a action item before you tonight. Unfortunately, that's coming next month.
Yeah, so tonight, we will be looking at the budget as Jackson and Ellie have described at a very, very brief and high level. So there will be changes. Jackson will go over the CIP program, and then Megan and Scott will be looking at our fee policy and facility access structure with you all. We've shown you the timeline since we've engaged with the PRAD throughout this whole process. It did get revised a little bit with your action items supposedly taking place tonight. That has been deferred out to August. So we will come back with that until then. And everything else is pretty much the same on a timeline for that. I did want to share that out to you. This next slide really just focuses upon our BPR uses by fund. 2019 through 2024 are actuals. So you will see the stacked columns there really represent our 5 main funds: general fund, 0.25 cent sales tax fund in the light green, the recreation activity fund, permanent parks and recreation fund, which you will have approval over in that lighter yellow, lottery fund in blue, and then other is all capital that is put into the budget, but not funds that we managed. We went over this with the PRAB in our budget 101, so hopefully some of this is familiar with you. Showing the 19 through 2024 for basically historic context. 2025 is what we've built the 2026 budget off of. We use the 2025 approved budget as our base budget. And then our 2026 budget basically right now has our base cost increases in it. And it's coming in at 51.6 million with no reductions. So base cost increases are basically anything that is going to be classified as inflationary, contractual, or city guidelines. So that would be like our fleet, technology, and energy. So this budget does not have any additional wants, needs, or proposals in it or requests. So we are basically looking at a flat budget. Just a couple things to point out on the operating side for our 2026 budget. We're looking at about 36.4 million submitted, or about 59% of the overall budget. The capital, which Jackson is going to touch on, comes in at 15.1 million, or 41% of the total budget. There right now, as it stands, it's about a 12% increase over prior year, with a majority of that due to capital expenditure. And you can really see that in that golden color or brown mustardy color for the other funding, which is our community culture, resilience, and safety, or CCRS tax, and our capital development funds. And you can see that spike up as we do have more programmed into 2026. Any questions on that before we move on?
Can I ask you, the 25% sales tax fund, when was that approved by the voters?
Initially in 1985, reapproved in 2015.
13, with the money available in 2035.
And what were the parameters of that ballot measure? You know, offhand?
In 2015, the language in 2013 actually unrestricted the funding. So the initial ballot measure in 95 had it really restricted for capital, for planning projects, for historic preservation. In 2015, when it was renewed, it was much more broad. It supports parks and recreation.
Does that go to 2035?
Correct.
That's it on the slide.
So the proposed reductions at the bottom left is, that will come off the 51.6, right?
Correct. So this does not have any reductions in it. This is just as it's been submitted. We are still working through what those reductions will look like, projecting out up to 4 million.
To be determined.
To be
And we'll see that in August.
Yes, so in August, we will come back to you with a revised slide that looks just like this, with what is being put forward to the city council study session. And then also we'll put an additional slide that kind of breaks it down to more of our personnel our non-personnel expenditure and our capital, just to get a different look at it. But because everything is kind of in flux right now, we're just rolling everything on the fund level.
Thank you.
Okay, this next slide right here, put this slide together for you, Permanent Park and Recreation Fund, its revenue to expense comparison, again, 2019 through 2024 is going to show your actuals. The 2025 does show the approved budget, and 2026 is submitted. With Perm Parks, you will see that, you know, we do have high spikes of blue, right? Especially 2019 and 2023. This is where we had a lot of capital projects going on. So I think Deb is aware, this is a lot of the capital expenditure out of this fund. So we will see spikes up some years when we are funding capital projects. But then you do also see where we do have a lot of revenue there.
Can you speak to what that may have been like in 2019? What were the capital projects?
2019 would have been Scott Carpenter Pool and the Boulder Reservoir, and then 2023 was the Flatirons Golf Course.
Thank you.
There's more projects in there, but those are really
The big
the
ones.
spikes.
So this one will be updated. We do spend a lot of time talking about the Recreation Activity Fund, or the RAF, or the PRAB. So this is another fund that we do monitor as base is revenue compared to expense. You do see the straight line across the bottom. That is the amount of general fund subsidy that we have gotten for our community benefit programming. It has been fairly flat since 2019 and continues to be flat through 2026. We know we are looking at some proposed reductions in this fund as well. And then also Scott and Megan will go over some of the new revenue that is programmed into the budget, about $750,000. 150 of that is from a Reclity grant that we have received, which will help with access into our centers, and then about $600,000 for fee usage increases.
Sorry, question on that. The RAF that's revenue we collect for our facilities, right? Correct. And when we see a flat like that, like, is that an indication we haven't raised our rates, or the usage has declined?
Black line is indicating the general fund subsidy received, so that's from the citywide coffers.
Okay.
The green line is the revenue that the department has generated and collected. Blue is the expense. You will see some years revenue slightly higher than expenses. Part of that is for every dollar that we generate, we need to put 16 cents into reserves. There's other capital expenditures that have been made out of this fund on a one-time basis. So our intention is 2025 is, or 2020 is actually an amazing year as far as you really want the revenue and expenses balanced. 2020 was not an amazing year, as I hear Ali chuckling over there, so.
Just on paper, it's an amazing year on paper.
Correct.
2022, yeah.
Since we operate this as a quasi-enterprise fund, social enterprise fund, our intention is every dollar that's made is reinvested back into the programming. So what might be viewed as a profit in a private corporation is really what goes in and pays for the financial aid and the scholarships the general fund subsidy can't support.
How are those reserves managed? The 16 cents.
There is a citywide policy of every fund has to have at least a 16.7% reserve. That is 2 months of operating expenses. That is generally best practice. I think that we have some hesitations as a department as far as whether or not that makes the most sense for our operations. What we did find is in 2020, we tapped into our reserves as a dollar amount, but our percentage did not change. Just because our revenue dropped so substantially, we had to hold less in reserves. It's just based on a percentage of overall expenses. And every fund in the city has this as a requirement. So this is a citywide direction, citywide policy.
Okay, so as we dive into the 2026 proposed budget, this does show what we have put forward for operating expenditure per fund as well as capital. So that is for operating coming in at that 36.4 million, capital coming in at the 15.1 million, for that total of 51.6 million overall. we have gone through and we do have some target reductions highlighted in each of the funds. We know that we are ballparking maybe up to about a $4 million overall target reduction. And reductions also may change by funds. So once we do get more definitive answers from EBT and from Central Finance and Guidance this week, and when we do return back to the crowd in August, we will, revise this and let you know where those impacts actually occurred, but just wanted to present something that showed where we've been doing some reductions in identification.
Can I ask a question about the permanent park and recreation funds?
Sure.
I'm not sure I really understand that. It's based on a mill levy, right? And so those collected funds go into that fund. How can we reduce it? Because it's restricted purpose, right?
Correct.
Yep, so a lot of the reductions that we're looking at for the permanent park and recreation, we've got about 1.6 million identified. 70,000 of that is operating, and that would be basically holding the position vacant into 2026. The other would be about 1.5 million hold on CIP projects for staffing shortages, also priority projects. So things that we had built into the budget last year, we may back out if that project is going to be deferred or put on hold just due to capacity or total funding needed.
So could it be like reallocated for, I guess it's not maintenance, but it's like making permanent improvements to parks and rec? So it could be reallocated between projects then? Is that the way it would work?
Yes, we've looked at the projects and we've reallocated funding to what can be accomplished, which Jackson's going to go over. That money would stay within the fund. We're not going to reallocate that money out. We would just not be spending it in 2026. Also, by not spending it down in 2026, we can build that up for future projects. We can earn interest off of that and put the fund in better health.
Okay, so it just reduces the budget, but it's there.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think your question is, this can't be used by other departments, and that's correct. This is dedicated to Parks and Recreation. So it's really just managing our cash flow a little bit differently. We are seeing flattening, declining property tax, that there will be less revenue in the future. That we're partially planning for that, partially just managing our cash flow.
Geez, you guys do amazing work.
I have a question. With something like the hiring freeze, we're saving money on salary, we're saving money on benefits, understood, right? Are there then costs that come up because we have less people working in the parks?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what they are?
Yeah, I mean, so we have 3 vacancies right now in park operations, and my concern is going into the hottest months of the summer, as the irrigation systems break, we will be less responsive to them. I mean, luckily grass is fairly resilient, but we could lose plants in horticulture areas. We could, I am asking them to be very, very thoughtful about prioritizing. Our parks are classified into mode 3, mode 2, mode 1. So Pearl Street Mall Civic Area, they're mode 1, they're highly visited, they drive economic vitality. Pearl Street Mall trash removal is 3 times a day, 7 days a week. Catalpa Park, my small neighborhood park there, we're there once a week. When we have more seasonal staffing, when we're fully staffed, we might be there a couple of times a week. And so if folks don't let us know about broken irrigation, that's probably our biggest risk going into August and September. In October, our concerns are making sure we properly de-winterize our entire irrigation system, which is a significant investment. And then going into the winter and the snow season, obviously we have a public safety responsibility to make sure the sidewalks adjacent to all of our parks and our multi-use paths are cleared of snow. So at current staffing levels, we could mostly get all of our snow removal done. We would have 0 redundancy if we have folks on vacation, if we have folks sick, and we would be sorely strained if there were a heavy or a significant snowfall. The city manager's office is aware. What they're wanting to make sure is that we can fulfill our commitments to existing staff before we bring new folks on, but we're having active conversations about the needs across the system. We could give other examples, but I think you asked about parks.
I think the secondary portion of that is the cost of delay for capital projects. Because this is capital funds, what we see is cost escalation has a significant impact, but we need the staff to be able to support these projects. I think we've been very clear with our department, you are not going to work 60, 80 hours a week to make sure these projects get done. You're going to maintain a work-life balance that is important for you. That I would say that's one of the unintended consequences that the public won't see right away, but does have longer term impacts.
So, taking this a little bit off of like the meats, nuts and bolts of the budget presentation, but Ally, when this budget goes into effect, or some version of it goes into effect next year, and, you know, the trash in my neighborhood park is not gonna get emptied quickly, and we're hearing from neighbors about that, like, do you have advice on how we should message
Yeah.
to?
This is the part where I said earlier, this is an opportunity. So what I have been trying to show folks is city council has prioritized a long-term financial strategy. You've been hearing about it. Charlotte Husky came, new folks, you didn't hear about it in January, but there's a lot of information out there. We have been trying to tell the community, again, that the level of service you want and the level of revenues we're receiving from taxes do not match. And so over the fall and into the winter, the Fund Our Future, which is the engagement part of the conversation, is kicking off. And so I would point community members to those conversations, because that's where their voice can have an impact on helping us prioritize services and helping inform the tax strategy. And also, is it this week or next week that City Council is talking about continuing the community culture, resilience, and safety tax? So that is an existing tax that is set to expire in 2029. They're setting it up for renewal in perpetuity, which would give us another funding stream to help address some of the backlog in our system, which is one of the reasons it's so expensive to operate, because it's really old. So what you should tell people is to pay attention. That was a really long answer, but to pay attention to the long-term financial strategy conversations, because we see folks show up for their thing. It's Spruce Pool, it's the South Boulder Rec Center, it's tennis, but we have a holistic problem, and ad hoc strategies are not going to balance our budget. We have to, with the community, have a conversation about thing A, thing B. Do you want both to be provided at a super high level of service? Okay, would you like to pay for it? Because this is what that costs. Or with finite resources, please help us prioritize, because we cannot do it all.
To that point, I want to thank Jackson, Stacey. I asked a question last Pratt meeting about how it all happened in COVID with some of these cuts and how we brought things back. And one of the things I saw in here is that they identified some things that no longer aligned and some gaps. Is this an opportunity to find this?
Yes, absolutely. I think that part of our business practice is continually looking at our service delivery, what programs just aren't meeting the same level of interest as before. We start, stop, phase out, retire programs all the time. I think that that's very much done at the recreation side. This is an opportunity to not only look at our department's operations as a whole, but the city's operations as a whole, as far as what services are we providing at a higher level than what the community expects, or is more expensive than the community expects. Can we reduce that level of service? Can we turn off that level of service? Is there something that we prioritize more?
Does that even apply to capital improvement projects?
It's a little bit trickier. I think that part of the capital improvement projects, so much of the capital improvement is focused on transportation and utilities. That going back to the water, wastewater example, there's an expectation you have clean water that you can drink. That I think looking at it as a percentage, the Parks and Recreation portion of citywide CIP isn't substantial, but every year there's they've changed their acronym so many times, project review team that basically looks at all of the CIP projects over the next 6 years and identifies what is the overlap. If we're going into building North Boulder Park and utilities is doing some drainage work there, let's synchronize those two projects together instead of coming up and ripping out the park 2 years later. So I think that's more how the prioritization currently works. I don't believe Fund Our Future is really prioritizing at the same level of CIP.
Correct. It's really around just the core government levels of service across the departments. The other piece I would add to Jackson's excellent answer is what is an opportunity is to look across the city at where we have duplication and where could we coordinate to really make sure that we're delivering on good governance to the community and making sure we're being really thoughtful about, there's a lot of opportunities with both open space and housing and human services where we are delivering the same service or serving the same community. And how do we make sure that we're not overly duplicating?
So 51 million isn't enough. What's ideal?
We provided numbers for that in the 2022 department plan, but due to cost escalation and significant impacts of policy decisions since then, I don't think we have a current number for operations. I think it was about a $5 million gap a year. If you took care of so we know in 2022, we said we needed another $1 million to continue the same level of Bennett for recreation. And then everything else was around taking care of the parks. Look at Jackson with his department plan. Jackson gets the prize for the night for bringing his department plan.
We had said 33.3 million was what we needed in 2022. Our capital gap was about $2 million short. O&M was 3.5 million, and then programming was $1 million. Cost escalation over that time frame, we've seen over 25%, but
That's operating.
this is operating and capital. The capital portion is 2 million, the operating is 4.5 million was what the need was identified in
3 years.
That was
of
across
this-
both parks and recreation.
Correct.
But just to point out with the capital, you're gonna see a lot of fluctuations, right? So the budget is sitting at 51 million for 2026. Out of that, we do have 11 million in the CCRS, the community culture, resilience, and safety tax for civic areas. So you will see that in flow too. So just don't look at that 51 million and say, oh, you have plenty of money, because 11 million of that is for one project.
I think what the department plan really identified is anything that's action and vision level funding does require a different funding source. So that's where CCRS has been incredibly helpful for civic area, Scott Carpenter, the golf course, Pearl Street Mall. Those are all funded through CCRS or the predecessor tax.
These are excellent questions. Thank you all for digging in.
I just want to say on the record that I respect the people who visited us this evening, but I think the closing Scott Carpenter pool was a very sage decision. And
Spruce.
excuse me, Spruce. I know it was hard, and I know that we have members of our community who are neighbors who are unhappy, and that's difficult, but seems like a prudent decision.
I appreciate that because I know it is hard, especially for the folks who are close to it. I love swimming at Spruce Pool. And when you look at the visitation numbers and the small percent of people that this decision impacts and the services that it protects, it's a good decision. And I don't like it. Both are true.
That's fair. That really was a great segue to our next slide. So thank you, Bernie.
So as we look across the department for potential budget reductions, there are going to be targeted service level reductions, as Ally stated, and Jackson as this evening, and also as our 2022 department plan indicated with that additional funding, we do have to change services. We have to do this in response to our flattening revenues and to really, bring down our costs to close this budget. So we are looking at basically 3 areas for reductions of personnel. City's intent, however, is to preserve current filled positions. That has not changed. We got you a very similar list last month when we were looking at the 2025 reductions. But for 2026, the focus will be on vacant positions. So really looking through all the current vacancies, and then if there are any vacancies, could we hold those open till the end of Q1 2026 to recognize those savings there. Also looking at our non-standard staffing, looking at service level offerings, basically reduce them during slow periods, right? So if there was a program that wasn't really very active in the summer and maybe only 1 or 2 people were attending it, right? Is that something that could be looked at to reduce and such? Also, if, weather related, can we cut back on those services there? For non-personnel, we are going through to prioritize those. The decrease is really going to be seen in materials and equipment. Can anything get deferred until 2027? Really looking at our supply inventory, making sure no one's overbuying, and then just looking at uniforms and travel, making sure that everything is necessary. And then the capital investment, CIP, really looking at our 2026 planned projects, looking at a prioritized list, making sure that there's staff capacity to support those projects, looking at the timing of projects, and then also deferring projects that may not have full funding. So instead of just putting things into the budget and tying up that funding, taking a more realistic look and saying, does this need to get started in 2027 instead?
I ask a past question. What was our SIP budget that we approved in 25 for 20?
For 2025, it was 46.2 million.
That was the SIP? Did we use it?
I'm sorry.
That was the capital improvement budget we approved?
Oh, the capital improvement budget, that was, original approval was at 9.338 million. We were awarded another 1.2 million in capital development funding, so that brought it up to 10.5 million.
Did we use it? Did we use it?
I think I'll speak to that on the next slide. In the memo, it calls out in June, we did an analysis in between 24 unspent funds and 25 approved budget. We had about $19 million in CIP projects that were planned to be spent, but had not been spent yet. I think part of what Mark's strategy with us has been is we really need to spend down that funding first, that we will have a smaller ask for a CIP in 2026, acknowledging that so much of that funding carries forward year after year, that we really want to complete those projects first before committing to anything new.
Is there a way to, I'm just trying to follow the dots. Is there a way to track that carryover?
It's done annually through the adjustments to base process that was reviewed by City Council in May. And that really just breaks it down at the fund level. It doesn't get down to say it was exactly this project and that's what's going on. I think to the planning team's credit, there was a lot of legacy projects that we kind of just kept committing to over COVID. It's stated in the memo, but when the 0.25% sales tax was renewed in 2013, and then when the CCRS was approved in 2017 and 2021, we did not add any additional staffing. So basically we would have this giant influx of funding to support more projects, but not the people to support it. And that's something that has shifted over the last year and a half.
Roughly what percentage of staff would be included in a capital investment program per year? I mean, if you have $10 million and we approved $11 million this year in the capital improvement program, what percentage of that technically would go to staff capacity?
Absolutely none of it. All of our staff is paid for out of the operating budget.
Okay. I just see it listed there. So this is staff capacity.
Staff capacity to support the projects.
Okay.
So we don't want to put funding into projects if we don't have the staff to actually do the work, the planning, and the design, to contract out construction and such.
I think you.
Okay, this is the end of the high level focus on the operating budget. I acknowledge these numbers aren't final. We will give you more updates next month. We will identify what those targeted service reductions are. Back to everyone's point, there really isn't any fluff left in the budget for us to reduce out of. I think that COVID was a very good exercise for us to really go in and really sharpen our budget and make sure that it was accurate. We will have some targeted service reductions. We will identify what those are. I think that with everything, we're leaning on the 22 department plan. We're looking at equity impacts. And then we're also looking at the data and metrics behind it. What is the visitation to Spruce Pool in the month of August and September? And we have all of that, and that's helping inform our decisions that we'll gladly communicate that out as well.
I don't know who, I mean, Allie, you might be the best person to answer this, but you talk about deferment like to 27. What happens if we're in just as bad a position then?
I'm really glad we're having conversations with the community over the next year about levels of service. Like that is the work ahead to say, this is what this costs. Are you willing to pay? We have anticipated tax measures with the community in both 25 and 26, and it is on us. I mean, we've been been talking with the team, it is on us to paint the picture of, we need, you know, the fact, you know, we need it, we're doing work, a lot of work with our asset management to know exactly what it costs to operate the system. The recreation number, you're gonna hear a little bit more about the gap and balancing that fund, but you know, it costs, if we want all of our parks to be in good condition, we're gonna have a number to inform those conversations this fall, if we want every park in good condition. And if we don't have that number, we are starting to prepare the list that instead of replacing play areas, we'll be removing them. We will have a proximity issue with play areas. We will be removing trash cans from parks because we cannot service them. And so to inform those conversations, we're going to have a list of what we won't be able to do without additional funding. And it's really a matter of across all the services, and I'll stick with parks as an example, we know we spend X amount of labor hours on turf management, X amount of labor hours on waste management, X hours on responding to graffiti and snow removal. And if we only have this amount of labor hours, what can we achieve with that? And what are we not going to do? We're working really hard to be able to set that up in a clear, plain speak way with the community.
Can you go back one more time to that slide that's blue and green, the blue and green? Yeah.
Or the RAF or from parks?
They're first, okay, uses by fund.
This is the department budget as a whole.
Per fund.
This is.
So I guess the one before that, the one you were just on. No, yeah. So it has gone up, and I understand that there's like money in the CIP, but it's gone up considerably every year. And maybe it's the carryover from the CIP, but I struggle with telling the community that they have to pay for what they're already paying for because they're not paying enough for it, which is why I think the public realm tax didn't pass. People think their taxes are high already. And so if we try to go at them again, I mean, my argument would be, we're getting more money every year. And I know the COVID is a thing.
I was gonna say, I wanna just visually, please delete these 3 years and see that from 2019 to 23 was a reduction. And if you add in cost escalation to these numbers, and if you delete capital, because again, we bank money, right? We don't spend, we spend. So if you delete capital and you add in cost allocation, I don't do the math, but like
a little over 3% increase in our operating from 25 to 26. So the majority of that increase is.
And from 2019, I suspect if we did that math, if we deleted capital, I don't think, and I know it's a perception thing, and I understand that we're hearing that from the community, and I think that's the piece that it's on us with the storytelling, but that's these, I think this graphic is a tricky one, because if you look at the 25 approved to 26, take out the gold capital bar at the very top, it's exactly the same. And cost escalation is double digits across many services. So the same means a reduction.
We've done this in 2024 to compare 2019 actuals to CPI, and our purchasing power decreased significantly. We would need a budget of over 50 million in 2024 just to maintain our purchasing power that we had in 2019.
It just goes back to the point where the budget is lean. There's not a lot of fluff, you know, in addition to the base cost increases that are programmed in, you know, the last years as a department to support our outcome-based budgeting. We've done a lot with realignments. So looking line item by line item, saying, okay, can this get moved? Or, you know, if someone's not spending it over here to keep this other service going, can we move things? So we've done a lot of work behind the scenes, which is also why you're not seeing confusion.
Can I ask a question? This is somewhat of a side issue, but with the 2027 Sundance Festival, or is the Parks Department getting an additional infusion of money just to sort of prepare for the community, for the tourists? And, you know, is that, I'm assuming it's happening, but.
Do you want to take that?
Sure. It's a yes and no sort of situation. With all of our revenue projections, we aren't actually requesting, or I'm sorry, we aren't recognizing revenue until it's received. If it's considered new revenue, so that's ballot measures, that's the prime effect, that's the Sundance Film Festival. What is being considered is priority positions or expenditures in 2026 and early 2027 to prepare for the Sundance Film Festival. And the intention there is we recognize that every dollar invested will have a return on investment. 2027 would be the first year of the Sundance Film Festival. We would then have updated revenues as well as expenses for how we're programming it. I think just calling it out directly, the Civic Area, Pearl Street Mall are kind of the heart of what's being considered, that we do have a significant impact there. I know that didn't directly answer your question, but because of the 26 budget being fiscally constrained, nothing new. There is nothing new that we have actually requested for 2026 at this point. All of that will be evaluated as we develop the 27 budget or late in 26 for key staff to support it.
Yeah, I mean, but there's gotta be like a long lead time, right? I mean, I understand it's bad timing, 2026 being such a tough year and probably 2027 too. But with the festival coming in and all these people coming in, I would just imagine the city would want to put the best foot forward, potentially providing additional funding to make sure that the city looks really good. We don't have trash, you know, that our parks look excellent. I mean, I'm just trying to understand how that conversation is playing out at a higher level.
Did you have anything you want?
Just that they're paying attention to it, and I know folks are working really hard, that the Sundance Film Festival was just in town last week to start the real heavy duty planning, and folks know and share that interest and are doing their best to figure it out. No, it's being talked about.
Yeah, okay,
so
thank you.
I have one more question. I know you guys want to get going, but I'm sorry. This may be a little too high level, but have departments, like, I'll just speak of Parks and Rec, ever consider creating their own basket for CPI instead of using the generic CPI, like specific to what our expenses are?
Yeah, I don't think that we have categorized it collectively within Parks and Recreation. We get guidance from central budget that CPI is 3 point whatever,
right.
And they project that out over the next 3 years. Mark just messaged me, CIP alone is up, 80% increase since 2019. That would be the cost of our capital parks projects. We can also look at minimum wage on our side. That's up over 50% since 2019. Cost of chemicals for the pools has skyrocketed. That there's certain areas that we know have increased significantly faster than inflation. Labor, janitorial, chemicals, fleet and equipment is a huge one. It is so difficult for us to order any of the specialized equipment at this point that that's being factored into cost escalation in the future, but it takes a while for us to play catch up.
Okay.
These are great questions.
Okay, we can go way back to the other direction. Sorry, it took us all the way back to like slide 1.
All good. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the capital investment program. You've heard about this before. CIP is anything that has a useful life of over 5 years and is over $50,000. We plan for the CIP 6 years in advance, and the way Parks and Recreation has broken that down is into asset management, named park facilities, and then system planning. You've seen this before. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but this really identifies how we're proposing to spend department funds over the next 6 years. You can see about 1/3 of it is dedicated towards asset management. Less than 2% is really focused on system planning. That's more of those plans. Going back to some comments earlier of the amount of plans that we provide, and you can see the majority of it's going into taking care of our facilities. These are named park projects, park refreshes, other examples. We will get into some of them on the next slide. So with 2026 funds, you already heard me mention that we will likely have carry forward from unspent 2025 funds. We have kind of limited the amount of new funding that we're requesting for named park projects. We are continuing to invest in the asset management programs just because we know that taking care of what we have is one of the themes from the department plan. Every dollar that we're spending now reduces longer term expenses down the road. So you have seen this list of asset management categories before. What we have shifted is some of the asset management categories within a park project. We are actually using those funds to work on that park project. You can see examples up here with North Boulder Park as well as Tom Watson. So if we're refreshing a play area, we're going to put it towards North Boulder Park, just recognizing that there is significant cost escalation there with the different playground aspects. So this really covers the asset management portion of the 2026 CIP. On this slide, we identify the named park projects where we do have additional funding going. Once again, this is coming back to a capacity of we don't want to overcommit and are sticking to the named park projects that you've already heard a lot about. Tom Watson already has significant funding in 2025. This is just additional funding that helps with our cash flow for planned 2026 expenses. And this is the same situation with North Boulder Park. For Pleasant View, we had borrowed that funding to support the urgent issues at the South Boulder Rec Center. This is really just re-requesting those funds. I would treat it more as a bridge loan from ourselves to focus on something that another department could help us with more immediately that has a huge community impact. So that's why we transferred the funds to South Boulder Rec Center earlier this year. And then looking at our 26 CIP, this really breaks it down by the different sources of funds. On the right-hand side, you see the CCRS. The CCRS funds are really dedicated to 3 projects. Because those support more of a broader citywide project, we typically don't look at that directly as the Parks and Recreation pot of money. It is the broader citywide CCRS funds to use. And it goes through a slightly different approval process, which is why we don't really get too in the weeds on that, but there is separate work being done to coordinate it. On the left-hand side, you will see the remaining colors as far as where we intend to rely on CIP funds in 2026. You can see that these dollar amounts are substantially less. The department plan will tell you we typically spend 5.8 to 6.6 million on CIP projects per year, and this is really a lot closer to 4.2, 4.3. And this is being mindful of the amount of funding that we're carrying forward and not requesting new funds until we really wrapped up our current projects.
Boulder Junction is the gray.
Boulder Junction doesn't even register on
So
here.
what's the big gray part for 11.4?
I'm sorry, the big gray, 11 million of it is CCRS.
Okay, right.
Boulder Junction, we're not requesting any new funds.
I just couldn't see the colors, but I didn't see the gray represented, so I just didn't.
Sorry, that's a mistake on our part. so.
Typically in the gray would be our other funds, so that relates to that golden rod color, whatever we want to call it, yellow mustard, spacey brown mustard color. We just don't have anything programmed out for 2026 except for the CCRS.
So this slide really identifies the named park projects. You do get slightly more I'm sorry. This slide represents everything that we are using the Permanent Park and Recreation Improvement Fund for the capital. Per the charter, you have approval or recommendation over the capital expenses out of the Perm Parks Fund. So this is calling out directly how much for each project would be coming out of this fund. Once again, these numbers might shift around slightly. North Boulder Park, obviously right over here. Tom Watson, you've heard about with the court system plan. Regional facilities, we have asset management funding set aside. And all of these other are really just asset management categories that we use to take care of the park system. Looking at the 6-year CIP, you can see that the gray portion is just reflective of the CCRS funds. The majority of our funds are coming from the Perm Parks Fund, which is driven by property tax, and then a pretty even split between the 0.25 and lottery funds. That's about 47.6 million over 6 years. This exceeds the amount that we had spent on a rolling average. So really just wanted to call that out, that it is more money. I know that it doesn't go as far as it used to.
And just one more time, the 0.25 sales tax, it was 0.25 fund is all parks. The permanent parks is all parks. Lottery is a portion.
Lottery is kind of a weird one. We currently have all of the funding in 25, as well as the current out years. It can be split with open space and mountain parks as well as greenways. That is part of the consideration as we rebalance everything in this city, that it has to go towards greenway. I'm sorry, there's better terminology to it. Public access parkland, more or less. Active recreation. There we are.
Active recreation.
Yes. I think I could get there. All right, and then I know that I've glossed over the CCRS projects. Once again, this is just part of the citywide process that Civic Area Phase 2 is one of the main projects, as is the Pearl Street Mall, and then East Boulder Community Center.
What was the last one? Oh, it's
the East Boulder Community Center. So this slide has been updated, really just reflects that in August, we will come back to you with actual numbers here and be asking for your approval. August 29th is when the city manager's recommended budget will be released to community. And then in September and October, city council will have public hearings and study sessions related to the approval of the budget. If the budget's approved, the funds become available on January 1st, and that just aligns with our fiscal year.
Do we have to unanimously approve the budget from Pravi's recommendation, or does it have to do majority? Or does it, I mean, so I'm just curious.
Within the memo that will go to city council, it will identify how many yays, nays, and abstentions or absent individuals. It just needs a simple majority.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
All right, so you had a lot of questions throughout. We do have 2 questions for you on the screen. Basically, any questions, concerns, or feedback on the strategies that we've identified. And then as we're considering the 5% reductions, do you have any input that we should be aware of?
I have a question about the 5%. I mean, is that in stone? Can we plead hardship or? You know,
We haven't tried that. What a good idea.
I think that I'm going to go back a ton of slides. What we were originally told is every department, every fund needs to find a 5% reduction. We see a few of these funds up here with 0 listed, just because those are only spent once the revenues have actually been received. We don't project revenues in the future for those funds. The 5% is a pretty set in stone. We're being hounded daily, hourly to find the full 5%. I think that this comes back to flexibility of funding. We have a lot of different dedicated sources that can be used in a variety of ways, that there may be a shuffling of some of the funds that is made as part of the citywide collective review of things. Going back to the question on the lottery fund, well, the lottery fund can be used by 3 different departments. If we haven't given up a full 5% reduction somewhere, could we give up more of a reduction on the lottery fund? There's a lot of flexibility that's being looked at collectively for the future.
The other thing I'll just note is that we successfully pointed out, like 90% of the recreation activity fund is user fees. We're not going to reduce those by 5%. That actually is counterproductive to the mission here, right? And so the reduction is just on the tax subsidies that support the services we described earlier. So that's why that number, you'll see the 250 for the wrap. It's not 5% of 15 million. It's 5% of the actual tax subsidies in that fund.
I guess my only thing about the 5% is if in a situation like Michael brought up earlier with we're just banking money. We're not giving it to anybody or reappropriating it, we're just banking it because it's dedicated to parks. That to me is frustrating if we're gonna be closing an important pool for $25,000. So if we're the permanent parks fund, so that's dedicated to parks, we're gonna reduce it by $1.1 million and bank it, right? Because we can't reuse it anywhere.
And Parks has those restrictions on them, so we couldn't take that money and then pay for lifeguards. Because that fund has restricted uses, which you can speak to the long term.
Yeah, I guess I'm not following the question. We're not banking money just to hit a target reduction, right? We're reducing the fund to align with the fact that across the 0.25 and other sales tax funded sources, everyone is projecting we're not going to achieve our full income. Even though the 0.25 is restricted, we have enough capital in the 0.25, sorry, Perm Parks is restricted. There's enough capital in the 0.25. There's enough operating in the 0.25 that those can be braided together. And so we're not banking money here while cutting services over here. Is that what I hear is your concern?
That's what I feel like I heard.
I think possibly like a little bit more context on the 5% reduction at like a citywide mandate. How does that, sort of play into some of the issues that we're having more on the Parks and Recreation side, thinking about, okay, with the shortfall that we're projecting and how we're gonna hit that. Is it very much aligned, this 5% mandate, with some of the things that we're also seeing across the department and changes that would be made regardless? Or is there a little bit of a disconnect between like that standard 5% across the board for every department and the plans that would make the most sense for, you know, this year and beyond for just parks?
I don't think I understand your question.
I think the direction we received from the city was each department could come up with their own strategy. I went back to this slide just because I think that we're really focused on a blended approach. Some departments only have operating dollars, some departments have a lot more capital. We chose to look at reductions in all three categories up here, that we aren't just doing only capital. Capital would be very easy to say we're not going to do X, Y, and Z projects. We've already committed to the community that we are doing so many named park projects that it feels like we need to continue with those, but could we shift funding elsewhere? But I think we were given a lot of flexibility as a department to determine how we achieve 5%.
I think that makes sense. I also was just curious about how that relates to like raising fees. Is that also part of like, if we're able to raise fees in certain areas, can we count that towards like a 5% reduction?
That's one of the strategies that we've thrown out, is anywhere that we can generate additional revenue, instead of looking at a reduction, can we say that we've generated an additional 5%? The Recreation Activity Fund, the RAF, is our biggest example of that because that's 90% user fees. So the next item you're going to hear is all about user fees, and if we are able to increase fees there, we don't need to find as substantial of reduction to the recreation world.
Does that answer your questions, Kira?
I think so. Does that make sense? Is that also what you were trying to get at?
It does. I guess I still am a little, if something is, if I still have a question about the permanent parks fund. So if we have to cut that by $1.1 million, but we're not using it for anything else, or are we using it for something else?
No, we're cutting it because we don't think the revenue is gonna be there. So
Or in 26, you think we'll be down revenue one?
that's the projection.
And
So
that
the projection is that be prepared that as taxes come in, we don't. It's interesting. I was trying to explain this to one of the Spruce Pool community members. We don't, you know, my job, I get a paycheck every 2 weeks and I know what it's gonna be. We don't know what our paycheck's gonna be, right? Like we are forecasting what people are gonna spend in sales tax. We are forecasting what property tax is a little bit easier, but it isn't right now because of so much state legislation at play that is impacting the property tax increases that we've been seeing for a long time. And so the forecast is that you are going to collect less money, adjust your budget accordingly.
So the permanent parks fund comes from, it's not property tax based?
It is property tax.
So isn't that, so don't we know what it'll be then? I mean, sales tax, I can see where we wouldn't know, but if it's coming out of property tax, then that should be pretty stable.
It's stable, except there's a reassessment year in state legislation that will impact it. Current projections are showing we had about 8 to 10% growth going back to 2013. Moving forward, they think that it's actually a 4% decrease every 2 years because of the redistribution at the state level. And then when reassessments occurred, property values were starting to decline. I know it doesn't feel like it as you're paying your property tax bills.
Yeah.
We're looking to buy a house.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm struggling with Spruce. I just think $25,000 is just like, I know we have to pinch our pennies everywhere across the board, but that to me just feels like a bad one. I don't like that one. Unlike my esteemed cohort here. I get it.
And part of it, I think, Jenny, too, is the hiring freeze, right? We have so many students going back to school in August, that third week in August, that we need to be able to keep the pools open, and the only way to do that is with our workforce. And if we're on this hiring freeze, we don't have a choice.
And I think I do want to call out the $25,000 there is the difference between expenses and revenue. That's not just the expenses. We've already factored in what the loss in revenue is. So This is really looking holistically at where are we subsidizing that we aren't hitting full cost recovery.
That's to me the bigger crux of it is that, you know, we have a fee policy and set priorities with the community based on, and if we look at who is being subsidized at Spruce, it's not target populations. And so we are protecting those services. And you're welcome to not like it. I don't like it either, right? But I like it a whole lot more than I like the other options for reducing services. There's no good choices when you're stopping doing something for the community. It's not fun.
Yeah, and it's $25,000 over what is like 2.5 weeks. And because
like
the swim teams aren't at the
Right,
other pools and because the kids are in school, it's less crowded everywhere else.
It's like they said that it used to be open until 8, now it's not open until 8. It used to be open through October, now it's not open until October. It used to be open through Memorial Day. Like, I get it. I mean, this is just like constant. I know you said it's 10 years. We've been talking about this 10 years, but like,
it is highly, highly subsidized, that
Yeah.
service. And without additional funding, we cannot continue.
I get it. I mean, I heard it. I just don't like it. I'm trying to
I don't
figure out a
either,
way.
honestly.
Like,
It's not
like to me, North Boulder Park, there's money sitting there for North Boulder Park. To me, that's not something that people are gonna, be impacted by as much as, people in our disabled community who depend on that pool. Because North Boulder Park exists. So if we're gonna be reallocating funds all over the place, I know it's only 2.5 weeks. It's just something like that, just to continue to reduce like something that's so neighborhood focused. To me, it's just
Well, and I think
difficult.
that's part of our next conversation too, is like, how do we get a little bit smarter about how we're doing our memberships and our funding strategies so that we're not in this type of situation?
Yeah, but I'm not a fan of increasing fees either, so. I know, I'm not.
Have magic money
I know, I'm not- I know.
Next topic.
I know. So this is just, I just find it difficult to talk about constantly putting this on. I mean, I know the community is who pays for it, but we've been paying for it for a long time, so.
You have to remember that, like, in Colorado, we pay the third lowest property taxes in this nation.
That's why I moved here, yeah.
I mean, it's a great deal. to
They're
live
also
here,
going up though, every
but
single year.
They should go up much faster and much higher.
I disagree.
We do.
Okay,
that a lot.
we're getting in, sorry, we're getting in the weeds,
All right.
so okay, so we can talk about this on the phone.
Okay.
Let's move on so we don't lose time.
Jackson steering. So Jackson and Stacy covered the expenses, and Megan and I are gonna talk about the revenue, and we're gonna really dive into that. Jackson, if you can click on the next slide, since you're steering for me, I appreciate it. This is really intended to be a first touch. Just like the rest of the budget, you're gonna hear a lot more in August, and really what we're hoping to do is get some input on how we charge fees across our system and what that looks like. And so we know that the RAF needs to generate a little over $12 million. We're budgeting a 7% increase from what we generated or what we had budgeted in 2025. So we're going up about 7% to about 12.1 million. Stacy mentioned that it's about $750,000 increase in revenue. So we know that's going to happen. And so what Megan and I have been working on is figuring out the best way to generate that additional, about 600,000 of that is through fees. And so tonight, what we're going to do is present a few options that we're considering, and we want to get some basic feedback from you. Our goal is to continue to provide equitable and affordable access. We want people to come in. We're here to provide recreation services, and we want that to happen. But the bottom line is we have to generate revenue. And so we have to be creative in order to make that happen. We do want to maintain service levels wherever possible, and we know that generating more revenue helps us to do that. So that's the hope there. And then we do have cost recovery targets for each of our programs, each of our facilities. And so that the goal is always to meet those. And then obviously achieving long-term financial sustainability is extremely important. So you'll see on the right side of the slide there, equity, accessible, affordable. And what's the new circle there really is flexible, right? We want to give people purchasing options for our programs and services, maybe a little bit differently than we've done that in the past. So what we're going to cover is a little bit of the timeline of talking about fees. We'll talk about some fee policy updates that you can expect to see later on this fall. And then tonight we'll talk a little bit more about the general structure of access to our facilities and really some of those seasonal facilities and how we want to provide access to those, as well as subsidy and then market alignment, so that you understand where we're coming from as far as some of those choices for fees. So the timeline, really looking at the timeline, as I mentioned, this is the first touch for prep. So based on the feedback that you all provide tonight, Megan and I are going to go back to the table and meet with our teams and say, all right, here's what prep thinks we should do as far as how we provide membership options and facility usage options to our community members. And so we're going to take that feedback and start to run and crunch the numbers. We know those numbers need to equate to about 600,000 more in revenue. So one way or another, we want to keep our costs down as much as possible, but we also need to find a way to generate that revenue. So here in July, you'll get the first touch. August, we're going to dive a little bit deeper and you'll see a more in-depth presentation about if you're a community member and you want to swim at the North Boulder Rec Center, here's your options for doing that. Or if you want to utilize the Boulder Reservoir, here's what it might look like. And so all those details will be coming later on. And then in September, we'll have a final structure based on your feedback that you give us in August. So that's our kind of timeline and our plan. All right, so a few facilities that I wanted to mention before we jump into the membership structure and really talk about what it looks like. The golf course is a little bit different and operates outside of our current membership structure. So we have golfers and there are memberships that we do sell at the golf course, but we've taken a look at the golf course and we know that we need to increase fees based on market. And so right now, 9 holes to go out and play 9 holes, it's pretty good fee. It aligns with market. We feel all right about that, but we are below market for 18 holes of golf. There's a lot of opportunity there, and we look at our other courses around the area and they are charging more, same with our cart fees. So you will see an increase in those fees proposed from us in September. We're also working on a community access framework. And what that framework does is really looks at all of our public spaces, and it's creating policies and procedures for department use of those spaces. And so we have a lot of partners and community organizations that rent our fields like Pleasant View. And we're developing a framework to really streamline access to those fields. And so along with that, we'll be looking at the rates for rental of our park areas and sports fields. So that'll be coming in September as well. And then the other one that we wanted to mention that you'll see some fees on is our courts. And so the court system plan came out last year, and there was an operational portion of that plan that made recommendations as to how we activate those courts. Right now, our memberships that you purchase for the rec centers will allow you, if you have a membership, to reserve spaces at the courts adjacent to the South Boulder Rec Center, East Boulder Community Center, and North Boulder Rec Center. There's courts right near those. And so people are renting those spaces if they have a membership. We know we need to look at that a little bit differently, and we need to look at the entire system. We're starting to invest in our courts, and Tom Watson will be the first one to go there, but we need to have a consistent process for the entire court system for how you reserve spaces and how you really just utilize those spaces aside from rentals. So we're going to look at that holistically over the next month or so and come back to you in September with court fees specifically. So with that, I will say that all the fee adjustments that we're making really need to align with our fee policy that was adopted in 2023. And we're looking very closely and want to make sure that it is equitable. And so tonight we're going to dive into things a little bit more with our membership structure. So first and foremost, before I hand this off to Megan, I want to mention the reason why we're doing this right now. I think it's one, because we are in a fiscally constrained environment and we do need to be creative with how we generate revenue. The other important reason is we are implementing a new recreation management software. So how people register for programs and sign up and buy a membership, it's all going to be new starting here in November. And so we've decided to go with a company called Amelia, and SmartRec is the program. And so that's how people will register. And so as part of setting up that program, that software, we need to input all of our fees. And so it's time that we just take a look at the whole structure and make some new decisions there. You've already heard a lot about expenses outpacing the revenue. There's a little bit of market misalignment, and I'm going to pass it on to Megan to start to talk about some of the public engagement that we've done and kind of what we're thinking.
Yeah, so some of you may remember in 2019, we did a facility access questionnaire that kind of asked some questions about like how people like to visit facilities, how they wanted to pay for facilities. Of course, at that time, they mentioned, well, you know, yeah, if there's no benefit to not getting it, we want everything, you know, all at once at one fee. Well, we're in a little bit of a different scenario now. And so we, in the feedback, the facility feedback form that went out here, I'm going to share some data in the next 3 slides or a lot of data. It's all in your packet. And we're going to be talking about this more in August. You have time to really digest some of this too and ask additional questions if you need to. But in this year's facility feedback, both the dot voting and the online questionnaire, we asked a few more questions. And so these questions are really tailored to the things that we had gaps in our previous analysis. Or where we wanted to just get a little bit more information. And so specifically, we were asking these questions to the recreation center members. And so what this information is used for at that point is, if you are a recreation center member, how would you prioritize access to these different facilities? In order to not increase the fees of a recreation center membership, would you support the outdoor facilities being sold separately? And you can see there that's 52% said yes, 17% said no, and then, you know, a pretty good portion unsure. And then would you support an increase in the daily drop-in fee to help reduce the burden of or how much we have to charge for passes into the future? And that one's a little bit more split, with just 42% saying yes, 25% saying no.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
About that, Megan? You know, I saw there's only 88 responses.
On the online version, yeah.
Right, and then a bunch of dots, which when I've seen it, you know, people can putting multiple dots down. One person can put multiple dots down. I think I saw somebody put a whole bunch of stickies at one person. So how valid is this data?
This is
given
not a valid it's not a statistically valid survey. This is just to help us get a good understanding. These specific questions were not dot voting. These specific questions were either paper surveys in English or Spanish or the online survey questions. So I think by the time I entered all the paper surveys, we didn't, or not surveys, it's not statistically valid. It's a feedback form. There's like 108 total responses. The dot voting was bonkers with responses. But yeah, no, this is a small snapshot. And it's not statistically valid.
But I think we can draw conclusions, right? So in
Yeah.
2019, we said, hey, if we give you access to the reservoir and the outdoor pools and the rec centers, do you want all of it all at once? And they said overwhelmingly, yes, we want that. Now we're at the point we're saying, do you want to pay more to continue to have access to all that? And they're saying, no, we don't want to pay more. We know, looking at the numbers of where our members go, most of our members go to one specific facility. Sometimes they go to 2 or even 3, but we're at the point now where looking at how many facilities are included in your membership is something that we're trying to consider, and that's what Megan is going to dive into. So this just provides a little bit of that context.
Cool, thanks.
Did you survey people who are like annual members and drop-in users and?
Yeah, I mean, we sent it to everyone. And so I could look up the responses on that, and it is included in the packet because I attached the full online results. But I don't recall off the top of my head what percentage of responses from what membership type.
I mean, I would assume that it was probably more members were like more well represented in the survey. So just even the fact that it's not overwhelmingly, yes, let's increase the daily drop-in rate. I'm assuming there's more members who are saying
Well, and if you look at, and this was primarily targeted at the recreation center members, right? And if you look at one of the next few slides here will show you that at our recreation centers, I think you can go to the next slide. This one doesn't exactly show it, but at our recreation centers, it's mainly single digits of drop-in daily entries, except for the North Boulder Rec Center, where it's actually a little bit more substantial amount of usage from daily drop-ins.
Still in the minority though.
Yes, compared to the other pass types generally. And that's true for the indoor facilities. And so again, a really high level, you have this information in your packet. The big takeaway here is that we've collected a lot of data. We've reviewed it and shared it in the memo for reference. It's really just helping, this information all just helps us understand the way the community's accessing our facilities and ultimately who may experience impact from any changes we propose or may make. And in our existing structure, this slide reminds you and shows you, in order to close our funding gap, we need to get up to a goal of a 67% cost recovery for these user fees, and we're at about a 48%. That's a $2.67 increase per average entry, which is 39% increase in our current membership structure, which we would really love to avoid that kind of large increase. And so the next slide here, this is that snapshot of across our whole system. And this is kind of getting more to your question. Across our whole system, this is who represents the usage. And so we broke this kind of into user profiles, and you can kind of see one of the big call outs is actually all of the drop-in entries across the whole system. The Boulder Reservoir only gets about 60,000 visits, and other facilities get in between, like the rec centers get in between like 150 to 200,000 visits a year. But 42% of all the drop-in visits are happening at the Boulder Reservoir. 79% of the Boulder Reservoir's visitation is through drop-in entry. So some of this data was in your packet, you can just see but in addition to all of this, right, we completed a lot of market analysis, which we gave you access to last month. You can go to the next slide.
Sorry, one question on that.
Yeah.
In the pie chart, third party is
primarily insurance providers. So those are people who might be your Silver Sneakers, Silver and Fit, Renew Active, traditionally Medicare, Medicaid members. They're almost all older adults, but they're not necessarily all residents.
Just to add a clarifier there, that it's part of a supplemental program that people buy. So you don't, if you qualify for Medicare, you do not just get Silver Sneakers. People buy a supplemental program. It's called Medicare Supplement B, and many of those include access to recreation vendors that accept these programs. We accept all the major third-party provider programs.
And we do get a reimbursement based on visitation. However, in the last 8 years, our reimbursements only increased 8%, and our expenses have increased over 40%. So all of this different market analysis, data analysis have come together, and we've also tried to go through an equity analysis. And what we've kind of noticed through some of this is, wow, we have a really complex system here. We have a Boulder Reservoir, we have courts, we have 3 rec centers, we have 2 outdoor pools, we have all of these really great things. And we're trying to give access to that in a really simple one-size-fits-all package. That is not common. It's very uncommon. And it makes it so that we don't actually have a market comparison for what we're trying to offer. And so we've avoided that causing too much of an issue, because when you have too much of an all-in package, your fees kind of do have to go up to cover everything in such diverse scenarios, right? And then things that should be maybe less expensive, the person who just wants access to that one thing that should just be a basic service is paying a really premier price. And the people who have access and want access to all things, they're getting a really great deal. But it's really hurting the people in the middle who really just want access to like 1 or 2 things, because they could get maybe a better deal if we weren't trying to package it all together. And so we've avoided this causing too many issues by pursuing free financial aid. So anyone under 60% AMI, which is the adjusted medium income in the area, gets 100% free access to all of our locations. But we've noticed as our fees increase, you continue to make it less affordable for those who just don't qualify for aid. And that's kind of where we're coming through with some very high level. I just want to be very blunt and honest. We can continue in our existing structure and we can make the budget balance. However, rates would need to increase nearly 40% to actually accomplish the funding gap. 39% to be accurate at that 267. And so if we were to increase up to 20% of a rate change and try to do that over a couple of years, we'd still have to reduce service levels. If we, increase over 20%, and again, try to do that over a couple of years, we could maybe maintain service levels and it would kind of hurt a little bit. And so that's why we're really coming to you and saying, well, we kind of want to explore if there's another option that maybe helps us meet these goals and help deliver really accessible services, in a different model.
Can I ask a question? So
Absolutely.
last year, I asked if I could ask a question, I started asking the question, is it okay?
How many yeses do you need? The answer is yes, yeah.
So last year we increased our fees to cover a $500,000 shortfall. And I was wondering did it increase do we have any measurement of success there? Do we know if we've increased or decreased visits from the year before?
So I will say that right now, 2025 numbers look excellent. We've done a really good job from our marketing team to the campaign that we ran for New Year's resolutions, selling memberships and getting more people in the door. It's looking really good. And the numbers right now, halfway through the year, are above what we had budgeted. So that feels really good. That being said, it's still not enough. And I think the bigger concern that I have is you have those that are paying, the high percentage of.
Yeah, we go back to slide 32.
Yeah, so we know that third-party memberships are not the subsidy or the contribution that we receive from those third-party vendors don't pay our full cost to operate. We know that financial assistance is 11%, which is a pretty high amount. And then we do a lot of discounting for seniors and for youth. And so because of all that, those that can pay we're outpacing the market and they're paying more to make up for those other groups. And I think that's where we need to look at things a little bit differently.
Yeah, and the reason I had us go back here is because the purchase passes. So people who are actually buying their memberships, it's only 48% of all of the entry. So third party, they're not buying their memberships through us. Financial assistance, they're not technically buying it, right? If you back those out, if you back out the 2% of employee passes and if you back out daily entries, it's only 48% of people that are buying their passes right now. And actually 55% of all of the passes that of all of the access is highly subsidized access to those users. So that means that remaining 48%, 45% are the ones that are kind of carrying the whole load for everyone to access everything.
So are we looking for a solution for that? And that's what we're talking about?
So that's the next slide. So we're gonna throw out a few options just for y'all to consider and we'd like some initial feedback.
Yeah.
I just a quick anecdote. I was in the hot tub in the South Boulder Rec Center a few weeks ago and a gentleman had, I think he was a senior. But this gentleman said, I love it because I'm not having to pay anything. And I don't think there were any financial issues. And so it just kind of made me realize that there are a lot of people who are getting complete free access. And perhaps there is disparity right there in terms of, because it's not necessarily income based, it might be just because of either age or the third party potential vendor situation, right?
Yeah, well, and those are choices, right? And it is in our department plan that we have said we do want to provide subsidy based on age to some extent, right? And we have said in our department plan that we want to provide subsidy based on need to some extent. But those are certainly things that are part of the conversation, like a third-party access. Do we want it to include access to absolutely everything? Or do we want those members to have a really good health and wellness option, but maybe going to this facility, well, maybe they get a discount on that facility, but it's just a little bit more because it doesn't support their health and wellness so much as it's a nice to have. I don't and this is just me giving examples that are not, this is nothing decided. This is just to help explain the conversation. So when we really look at the market, most organizations, a lot of organizations don't offer the level of services that we have. When you look at market comparisons for Scott Carpenter Pool or the Boulder Reservoir, you're not usually looking at a municipality that offers all the same things that we do. We have a lot of services that are really great. So again, reminder, we can not change anything and just raise fees, and it's not super financially feasible, and it starts making the memberships even less likely to be available to the average person, right? When you look at the market research, a lot of people do one of two options. They either separate these facilities by how they compare to their market. So like all the rec centers would potentially be sold together as a rec center membership. You can definitely continue to do that. So if you want to go to south or east or north, it's one facility fee for the whole thing. They're similar enough facilities, you can price them similarly. Or this recreation center plus kind of model where if someone has a rec center membership, maybe that extends them an additional benefit above financial need or age-based discounting to additional facilities. So if you have a rec center membership and you want to go to the Boulder Reservoir, well, maybe that gets you a 15% discount on the membership there. So there's an additional benefit to being a member of the whole system and going to multiple facilities. But you don't necessarily have to buy in and pay for the value of every facility if you're not using every facility. So these are kind of some of the different options. Now, with that said, we do know that people do like access to everything. And so on the next slide here, we do think there is a space in either of these potential new models to still sell an all-in pass. What's really great about that is that's the simplicity and the ease for the people who do like multiple facilities. And it allows us to cost it at the cost recovery targets that we need to. And that the people who can afford to do that or who do want access to all the facilities, that might still be the best deal for them, right? But those who just want to go to one of the rec centers don't have to pay to access the Boulder Reservoir when they're never going to go there. And what's also great about this is you can potentially add future access or benefits to that in the future. So if we do come up with a really great system for court access on these passes, maybe that's something we add into a pass like this in the future. So that was yeah, go ahead.
Could the golf course be part of this in some way?
Potentially you could do if you have a membership, you have a, but we're not looking at that right now. It's completely separate.
I will say
If you have an
that,
all-in pass, you get 15% off if you want to play golf
or
something.
yeah, there's a lot we could certainly consider. What I would say right now with the golf course is we're filling our tee sheets. If the weather's good, it's full. I think the biggest thing that we need to look at Flatirons is making sure that we're charging the right amount and within the market and at a cost that people are willing to pay so that we can continue to fill the tee sheet. I don't think if the course was empty half the time, I would say absolutely, let's figure out a way to include that in an all-in membership. I don't think we're at the point where it fiscally makes sense.
We are definitely going to be raising prices at the golf course right now.
We're gonna recommend that. I think like I mentioned, we're under market for 18 holes for sure, and our cart fees are very, very low.
When you bring all these costs next month, will you have comparative data like last time?
Yep.
Great, thank you.
And so actually the next slide. So this first little general structure question, we do have a couple specific questions for you. It's just.
So the first question, yeah, any general questions, I think Megan shared a lot of information right there. There's a ton of background information in your packet. We feel like there's an opportunity here to maximize revenue and yet still keep down the cost a little bit for the folks by simply separating other facilities. Some of that data will tell you how much more expensive it is to operate the Boulder Reservoir, for example. It's costly. It costs more to operate Scott Carpenter Pool than it does to operate the rec centers as far as based on the time it's open during the season. And so what I will say is, I think by separating memberships, keeping an all-in option that you can pay for everything. If you want to pay for it, great, pay for it. By separating the facilities, it really then potentially can allow us to keep those costs down and focus on what people really want to be using. So what we'd like to know is any general thoughts or perceptions as to whether or not we're going in the right direction. And is there anything specific you would like us to consider as we start to pull together some numbers for you?
Yeah. I think you are going in the right direction, and I have a question on. But in our packet, you've got cost recovery. And I'm just looking at the reservoir, which entrance fees are 46% cost recovery. Yet the additional services bring it up 61%. Is that something we can add to these different rec centers? And
Absolutely, that's happening regardless of what we talk about today. So having a diverse business model, it really helps any business be better and stronger. And for us, it means that we can provide more services. So if, for instance, if we were to improve our rental spaces at the East Boulder Community Center through the renovation, right? Well, maybe we can then rent out more spaces for weddings and charge it at a rate that's fair. But that's another revenue source that makes us less reliant on membership solely. So looking at those opportunities is definitely something that we're doing. And it's not like it's just not part of this conversation because it's already so complex, but it is absolutely happening.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I only see 4 categories that are below the 67% target with the additional sources.
Yeah, I will say that the reservoir does a remarkable job with their special events and their rentals. There's stuff happening all the time. It's a little bit different with the rec centers in that, we could rent out the gyms all the time, but then those that are paying for a membership wouldn't have access to the gym. And so it's that fine balance of how often do you rent out the spaces? We do after proms, we do some events each year, but we don't want to rent out our spaces all the time because that's to the detriment of our regular users and community members.
And some of the math that you're talking, I think the graph that you're talking about the total of the cost recovery.
Yeah.
It's all of the revenue already grouped in that's getting us to that total. So for instance, like at the North Boulder Rec Center, I think like 89%. Yeah, it's this graph, right? The problem is the total isn't covering the whole total. It needs to, there's a budget shortfall. Yeah, so this is, it's the other, yeah, that one. Yeah, that one.
There you go.
Yeah, so total cost recovery of all sources. So all sources includes all those other things that we're doing versus cost recovery of entrance fee only. And you can see we're down at 48%, 38% at Spruce Pool, 43%, 50%. The place that we're doing best at entrance is East Boulder Community Center based on that cost recovery. But there's a gap in every single location.
Yep.
So, given the economic landscape, I think this is absolutely the direction. So I really appreciate that you all are thinking about this, sort of like, being able to peel out all the pieces and then you can pick what you want to spend the money on. I think that makes a lot of sense. I had a question though on if there was the option where you select the facility. So like I'm in South Boulder, I want to swim at South Boulder's pool. And let's say I were to select, I want only pay for that because I don't use the Boulder Reservoir or Scott Carpenter. Would there be, I think you may have had, maybe you didn't have this in there, but like, let's say I pick South Boulder and I'm only paying for that, but something happens at South Boulder, some issue breaks down, so I can't use it. I assume there would be a mechanism where there's some sort of temporary pass for, you know, in the meantime, I can go to East Boulder or something if we went with that kind of option, because I know that's the far right option.
Well, and generally right now, we're considering the rec centers would be sold altogether regardless.
Oh,
Because
you
they
still-
do
oh, they're
have the
still lumped
same,
together.
they
Okay.
do have the same market, so we would look at
Ah.
the same market data for that. So if you sold it all separately, it would probably all be the
Oh.
same price. So we're just kind of lumping.
I thought per facility meant you pick.
Yeah, if you look at that first bullet point, I think Megan and I talked about this extensively and because of our closures, our annual closures of different facilities and
Yeah, you
whatnot,
wanna
it's
have
it's
that
much
diversity.
easier
Yeah, yeah.
to just say, you know, we're gonna close each facility for a week each year but you're able to go to those other two that you normally wouldn't visit.
So using round numbers, if right now it costs $100 a month to go to South Boulder Rec, and you want to package all the rec centers, is it gonna be $300 a month? Or what are you gonna charge? Like, how are you planning on?
That's what we're gonna get into
Next
next
time.
month.
Yeah.
And we'll get into some of those details and I think bottom line is we need to generate a lot more money or we need to reduce services. And so what does that look like? And so we're not only working with Meg and I, we've got a whole team working on this as well as our marketing person. Because ultimately we have to be able to sell these passes too, and they have to make sense and they have to align with market. So we're working on all that and we'll have quite a bit of information for you in August. We just wanted to make sure that the PRAB was, you know, thinks we're on the right path to consider some level of change right now. And we think it's the right time to change based on the new rec management software and the fiscally constrained environment.
I agree. I don't really, again, I think it all comes down to the bottom line, but how do you think this helps the people in the middle who are subsidizing?
Well, that's the next section and we're gonna get into that here next.
Towards the third section.
Oh, you're gonna go over it. Yeah, we're gonna get to that in a little bit. We'll talk
Yeah.
about seasonal facilities
We're gonna
first.
talk seasonal facilities and then we're gonna specifically talk.
Just my two cents, but I appreciate the work. I think it's really creative and it's probably really hard to do and you gotta crunch all this data. But you know, I definitely think you're going in the right direction with either that yellow one or the one on the right.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, completely agree. It's definitely creative and a better way to like price according to the value that each person is getting from the activities that matter the most to them. And there's also some smart things also I saw in the packet. You know, if there's no incentive really to, if you're paying for a rec center membership and courts are included and then you can't make it, you don't really have as much of an incentive to cancel that reservation. And then that court isn't being used and it looks like all of the courts are reserved. So I think there's also some other benefits in just like realigning incentives that can benefit a lot of people.
All right, let's keep moving.
Yeah, and so next we're talking specifically about some of the seasonal facilities. So some of this, as Jackson mentioned before, the cost to operate our outdoor facilities is increasing a lot faster than the cost to operate our indoor facilities between the staffing, the chemical expense, the heating expense. And right now our outdoor pools rely very heavily on entrance fees to cover their costs. Specifically at Scott Carpenter, you know, our market tells us like this is a really highly specialized facility. There's only a few facilities like this in the state when we do comparables, right? And they are commonly treated differently than say an indoor facility. Scott Carpenter's the absolute most expensive facility to operate right now. It's $604 per hour, per operational hour. By the time you count extended seasons and everything else. Spruce Pool is completely different. Now, if we talk about Spruce Pool and Scott Carpenter, we're talking about totally different markets of facilities. It's a really aging facility. It receives the least amount of usage. And honestly, we could go either way with Spruce Pool. We can sell Spruce Pool if we do the per facility thing with Scott Carpenter as an outdoor pool pass, or you could actually lump it in with the rec centers. The market is split and it could go either way.
Can I ask a question? So number one, why is Scott Carpenter so expensive to operate? And number two, why would Spruce Pool, are you considering packaging it potentially in an outdoor pool category because it's old and then at some point if we invest in it, and it becomes more special or something, that would be peeled out and potentially be its own or be part of the outdoor. So sorry, I'm asking you 2 questions.
Yeah, so I think the first question is, right now, spruce, I'm just saying that the market depth, so you're gonna look at the options, and then next month we'll be able to like dive in a little bit more too, and I certainly want your feedback now as well, but spruce pool, the market tells us that a pool like spruce, sometimes people just lump it in with the rec centers. This is a really small, single amenity type pool. And sometimes people might lump it in with like another pool that they sell separately. So we could go either way. I think if it were to be renovated in the future, we'd have to then relook at what does the market of spruce pool, like what are now the market comparables and what's the smartest thing to do. But right now, as it is, it certainly could, I don't think it makes sense to sell access to spruce pool 100% separately. It's included with this thing or included with this other thing.
Your other question too on
Yeah,
Scott
what was it?
Carpenter, it's really staffing. So how many aquatic staff does it take to run?
It takes about 24 aquatic staff to operate that pool per operational hour when the leisure pool and the lap pool are operating. Additionally, the chemicals alone are like $15,000 a month.
So it's more like the
Heating-
size of the
Heating the
pool.
pool, yeah, the size of the
amenity.
water, the fact that it's open in September when the leaves are all in the pool, like that takes a lot of chemicals to offset some of that.
It's the highest facility and for just MPE, janitorial, chemicals, energy out of our whole system to operate.
Yeah,
in that amount of time.
Thank you.
Just on Scott, excuse me, on Spruce, like, when are we gonna get into a South Florida Recreation Center problem with that pool where it's nearing the end of its lifespan?
Well, we have actually, for instance, like we have 3 brand new boilers at Spruce Pool right now. I think with any aging facility, you hit those problems as they occur. In the last 5 years, we've addressed some minor leaking there. We've completely replaced all the boilers. We've replaced a pool pump. It's certainly on the list that we know it's aging and we need to decide what is happening next with it.
And I believe the infrastructure's had major investments over the years. I don't recall the year of the last one, but sometime in the 2000s, there have been major investments on that. I mean, there's no HVAC, there's no roof, there's no envelope, right? So you reduce 75% of the issues, but so the biggest investments there are the pool equipment, which Megan just mentioned. And even before the pumps, the boilers had been replaced less than 10 years ago. And then the pool shell had some significant work sometime in the 2000s. So
we've continued to invest in it. And right now, the biggest things that could go wrong there, we've already replaced in the last 3 years.
it's more affordable to invest in Spruce than it is Scott Carpenter, just from a sheer order of magnitude, right? So
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a different situation.
So the fact that it's noted on the slide that it's aging, so is that just, you're just telling us that we're aware?
It was built in 1963. Same year as Scott Carpenter. And so even though it's had some investments, at some point, like 50 years is nowhere at 60, like.
All right, so Boulder Reservoir, we also know that we need to make some changes to how you access the reservoir. It's different than our rec centers. A lot of families or folks will come in and just experience it for the day, right? They'll pay the daily drop-in fee. They don't necessarily want a membership and be there all the time, although we do have members. But a lot of folks, 79% of our access is coming from just a daily drop-in. So looking at ways to address that a little bit differently is what we're considering. Some places do a per car entry fee. Like if you go up to Rocky Mountain National Park, you pay per axle or you pay an entry fee. There's different ways of doing it, and this facility is very unique. We operate and we're funded very differently than other reservoirs. And so certainly we're going to take a strong look at this and come to you with some recommendations for what those daily entry fees look like and how we make sure that we're providing access to the reservoir. Right now, that facility, the goal is 100% cost recovery. We do that from the extra rentals, from the special events. That's where we're making up that money, which we'll continue to do. But we also want to make sure that we're priced appropriately for our market and we have the best access and ability for people to get into the reservoir and utilize the space. So you'll see more on the Boulder Reservoir coming up as well. So overall, looking at our seasonal facility considerations, there's several options. And I think based on the feedback that we've already heard from you all, I think you're in favor of us continuing to do this work and to continue to look at how memberships are sold and how access is granted to our outdoor spaces or our seasonal facilities. And they are each a little bit unique. So Scott Carpenter and Spruce, as Megan said, could be grouped either with an outdoor pool pass or with the rec centers. We could look at that in different ways. The reservoir, you know, we really need to align those fees based on the market and the cost to utilize that facility. And then the whether or not we do the daily admissions or the memberships, I think we need to look at both of those for the reservoir because we do have so many different types of users there. So we're going to come back to you in August with your approval, diving into all these outdoor facilities as well. Now is the time to look at all of our memberships and all of our entry fees, and we're going to try and do this all in one lump sum. So we're going to put a lot of information in front of you in August and recommendations. And I guess with that, we'll move into some questions. So any general questions about the outdoor pools or the Boulder Reservoir?
Don't you have one about boating?
So.
Didn't you want to like try your boats off? Didn't you want to
Oh,
increase the
I always,
permit?
yes, I always want to get motor boats off the reservoir.
Is that something that would be considered in here? Like, no, that's different. That's sort
Policy
of
conversation that's part of Boulder Reservoir site planning.
Yep.
And I say it that and that there's current policy approved by city council that allows it. And so it's a whole large planning process that needs to happen to revisit the direction for that site.
But if we were to increase the permit fees for that, would that come through us?
You all review them.
You review the fees. It's part of our overall budget.
And that's not part
So-
of this, though. This is just entry.
Correct. What I will say is, we've already established what we need to generate as far as revenue in the RAF this next year. It's about $12.1 million through all of these facilities. The key is how are we going to get there? And that's what we're looking at right now. It's about a $600,000 increase for the year in entry fees is what we're trying to accomplish.
For the reservoir, does it take into account selling concessions and potentially alcohol as a way to offset increased costs?
It's a great question. At this point, we have a vendor that is in there operating the restaurant and they pay us a percentage of their gross revenue. And then they also pay a rent on a monthly basis. I don't know that alcohol sales would be enough to make a huge impact on the budget.
I mean, definitely, it's not going to make a huge impact on the budget, but potentially it could reduce the increase in
Absolutely.
membership fees. I'm 20 cents or something, but still, I mean, it could be a factor.
Absolutely. And I will say that I think as part of the PRAB roles and responsibilities, you've signed up to help us with our regional facility fees. So expect a phone call from me. And we're going to talk about this. And I would love for you to help us dive into the reservoir and what that looks like.
Sounds good.
Great.
Feedback from the community on this stuff, how would that come in? Is it just people who are actively listening to these meetings?
You know, that's a great question. And I think obviously we need to make fiscally smart decisions as to how we generate this revenue. The revenue has to come in one way or the other. We have done some level of public engagement specifically around the rec center members. We've done quite a bit of engagement around the Boulder Reservoir and those that are regular users of the Boulder Reservoir. And so I think we certainly need to take all that into account. But also the bottom line is we have to make ends meet and make good financial decisions the best we can. And so based on our operating expenses, it'd be really, really easy to say, you know, we're going to charge up here. We know we can't because of market. And so this next section that we're going to dive into is about subsidy and financial assistance and discounting. And so maybe that will help answer a few of those questions. But I agree, we have a little bit more work to do with the community engagement piece.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
But I want to,
sorry. Go
can I
ahead.
just add a
Yep.
piece on that to be very careful about that informing and talking to the community and letting them know what's going on is a form of community engagement when for a conversation like this, we cannot go out to the community every year and say, what would you like to pay? Because the answer is going to be not a lot. Right. And so the engagement is heavy on Inform with the annual fee setting because it is guided by the statistically valid, robust community engagement, PRAB and city council approved BPR plan. And so over the next couple of months, you will not hear a lot about us going out and doing the deep dive engagement we do when we're planning a park or when we're doing and we have information from the 22 BPR plan. And even in that survey, we ask folks like, what should taxes support? And their answer is everything. Like they think taxes should support 50% of the entry fees. That's not where we are. So I just want to be careful. I think sometimes it's easier for me to say like, we're not going to be doing a lot of community engagement on fees.
So I'm just thinking that, I 100% think you all are going in the right direction. The economic situation is driving this creative discussion. But I'm thinking, at the next meeting, you'll get input from the board. But it would be great to sort of start, getting advocates who are saying, yeah, under the circumstances, we understand where PRAB is, having to make some tough decisions. And, yes, we could just raise the fee for everyone and then, it's not equitable. I'm just trying to figure out like, how do we get certain groups? I'm thinking, for example, Reimagine South Boulder, just because I live in the neighborhood, but like, it would be great to engage them at some level, if they're not listening to this already, but engage them at some level to say, okay, yeah, what you're doing is reasonable and we support the decision. And, maybe you do it this way. And it just a more iterative way to inform our decision-making in August or something like that.
Yeah, and I think there'll be a lot of kind of change management and communication that needs to occur once everything goes into effect for 2026 as well. What I will say is the hope would be that if you look at a general rec center user right now, they're paying and they have access to everything. And if we don't raise their fees so much, they still have access to their rec center with their fees not increasing that much. But maybe now if they want to go use the Boulder Reservoir, they have to pay for that on top. Or if they want to rent courts, they also have to pay for the rental of the court time that they utilize. Those are the kind of decisions that I think we need to look at. And that's what we're going to pull together for you.
Okay. Well, and remember that like 79% of the users at the Boulder Reservoir are drop-in entries. And when someone who's dropping into a facility like the Boulder Reservoir goes anywhere else to drop into that facility, they're actually usually paying per car. And so some of the information we'll come back with will actually maybe create a better user experience for people who are used to entering a facility that way. So, I think sometimes the data and analysis, the market analysis helps us understand what the public might expect at that type of facility.
Yeah. Okay. Is there a plan? Are we gonna raise fees every year? Or is there a plan to hold for a little while?
I think that's something that we have to consider. I think historically the goal was to look at fees every 2 years. For memberships and for daily admissions. Just the escalation and where we're at with our costs going through the roof, we've had to look at things a little bit differently. My hope would be is whatever we present to you in August would set us up for at least all of 26 and 27, and then we wouldn't have to look at it again until the 28 budget.
And then so you'll present it, the timeline was presented in August? And then when is it a final approval?
In September.
Okay.
Do you know roughly what percentage of rec center users are also using courts?
What's difficult is we can find out who is a rec center member that reserves courts, and it's a small number. What we can't do is there's no way to track who's actually at the courts. There's no check-in at the courts. So even Silver Sneakers or whatnot, if they're reserving that space, we're not getting a reimbursement for court usage at all. So looking at the courts, I think needs to be a separate thing that we will dive into with some of those numbers.
Yeah, because just a couple days ago, I went to the pickleball courts there at South Boulder. And all I had to do was just walk onto the court and just start playing. No one knew whether I was
Yep.
actually paying a fee. So yeah, there's not good enforcement on that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially at our satellite courts where there's not a rec center right near them, right?
Right.
So, which is great, like that's a service I think Parks wants to provide, like we want to provide that and we want to provide if you want to guarantee the space that you can book it ahead.
Okay, should we move on to the next section here?
Yes.
We're closing at 9 o'clock.
Yes, so I'll go through this pretty quickly. We've thrown a lot of numbers at you. And there's a lot in your packet that I think is important. We always consider discounting and subsidy as far as how we set our fees. There's a few things on this slide that really stand out. First and foremost, 55% of our entries across the entire system are either discounted or subsidized. So there's quite a few. You can see that for age-based, for third party, and then the financial assistance. On the right side there, you'll see our growth in our financial aid program and that enrollment. In 2014, it was 829 people. We're now over 4,300 people participating. And that's individuals that have come to us and have a median household income of less than 60% of the area. And so they're getting free access to our facility. So one of the things that we want to look at also for 2026 is potentially implementing a sliding scale so that those that can pay a certain amount would pay, and we'd look at that a little bit more comprehensively. But I think discounting is a big part of how we figure out our numbers.
Just a quick question. Is this for city residents and non-city residents?
Financial aid is just for City of Boulder residents.
Okay.
Third-party members could be residents or non-residents.
Okay.
And this is what we're offering right now. This is a 25% discount for seniors and 40% for you.
That's for seniors who pay, yeah.
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 Okay, thank you.
And that's according to our fee policy.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So what we're gonna look at is financial aid and creating that sliding scale, as I mentioned. We think that's a good recommendation for creating an equitable opportunity for those to utilize our space. We can't just keep saying yes to more and more people that fall under 60% AMI. There's no money paying for that. And so that would mean other folks that are paying would need to cover that additional difference. And so we're gonna we feel like we need to look at a sliding scale there.
What do you mean sliding scale?
Okay, so if your household income, let's say it falls at 55% AMI,
Mhm.
your maybe discount could be 75% and you pay 25% of the fee.
Okay.
If your income falls at 40%, maybe you get 95%.
Okay, yeah,
I'm not
I
really
get it.
sure, but a scale based on your income level.
Great.
Third-party memberships are really an interesting one. So we have agreements with third-party groups like Silver Sneakers, and we're proposing to keep those in place through 2026. We feel like they need to stay in place, and then as those contracts expire, we can renegotiate with those insurance companies. That being said, if we were to just eliminate Silver Sneakers, for example, there's a large portion of the population that would be pretty darn frustrated. And they would probably just drive to the Louisville Rec Center because they accept it there. So what we need to do is really look at those rates and figure out how we want to handle those third-party memberships.
Well, and we can talk about like what locations that they give access to. So it's actually pretty abnormal that you would give access to a third-party membership type at a reservoir or at a pool like Stock Carpenter.
So as far as senior subsidies, we could reduce the senior subsidy rate only at outdoor facilities. So for example, you keep the full subsidy at the indoor facilities and maybe reduce that at the outdoor facilities. We could also look at changing that percentage of a discount. It doesn't necessarily need to be 25% discount. It could be a 20% discount. Those would make big differences. And then same for youth. We would look at, first and foremost, what do we classify a youth? Right now, a 3-year-old, I believe, 3 and under.
Yeah,
is-
under 3 is free.
Under 3 is
And
free.
Right now, we include 18-year-olds as youth, which is abnormal in the market. Typically, once they're 18, they are classified as an adult.
But some places across the market for an outdoor pool like Scott Carpenter, you go with a family, they're charging even for anyone over 6 months old. So looking at how we classify youth and what we charge for is something that we could certainly consider as far as that definition, and then figuring out what that level of subsidy should be for youth. It could be altered as well.
You guys are gonna have all of this to present in August?
It's a lot of
The
information.
hope is that you all are giving feedback on if there's anything you see that you think is
Don't do that.
bazonkas and it's like, yeah, I mean, our hope tonight is that you're helping to narrow it down a little bit.
So what's, I mean, yeah, but we can get into that. This is just.
This is why we recommended
This is
a
a
study
lot.
session in August, so
Yeah.
that it would be the sole focus of the meeting.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, yeah.
Yep. And then the last one, Megan, I think you're gonna talk about some of the market
Yeah,
considerations.
and so these are just a little bit more like small little things in the market. Okay, so first, drop-in entries. You probably have seen a lot of gyms start charging more for a drop-in entry to increase pass sales. So that's certainly something we can consider. Municipalities still traditionally offer drop-in rates. We've historically charged the drop-in rate at least at the 90% plus cost recovery rate. So if we keep the drop-in rate at a 100% cost recovery or 90% cost recovery, it does need to increase substantially. We could also make a decision that, hey, we really want to push our punch passes that don't expire. And we could look at doing more of the gym model, which is more of a private industry model. That's just for consideration. For punch passes, we have heard from the community that people prefer punch passes having access to everything. Additionally, if you start offering a different punch pass for Scott Carpenter and the reservoir and the facilities, and they're not all the same price and the same access, it gets really confusing. So that's something that, we'd probably recommend that we would want to have our punch passes be aligned with an all-in type of pass, which might impact its affordability compared to other pass options. But it's certainly, something we'd love your feedback on. And then finally, out of over 60 market comparisons, Boulder is the only municipality allowing 8 adults or seniors and unlimited youth on household passes. Most organizations limit household passes to 2 adults and 2 youth with the ability to add members at a discounted rate. And so that's just like a really small kind of market alignment where instead of, a household of 10 people paying 1.6 of the adult annual rate, which is what it is right now, maybe we clean that up just a little while still ensuring there's a good amount of access, especially knowing that our financial aid passes currently are free. Equity, how we consider that, and could be a little bit, we don't have to worry about it as much since we're already giving free passes to the people who really need it. Those are kind of the small market alignment things we want some feedback on.
All right, so this is the end of that section. And again, any initial thoughts on discounting financial aid, how we set up our passes that you heard that resonated, or you said, don't do that?
Yeah.
Is there another section or is that the last section? Okay,
that's it.
Okay.
So if there's, if it's a third party vendor, say, one of those contracts that you have, you really don't have much freedom to change them now, is that right?
So Silver Sneakers, for example, will expire and we'll be renegotiating in the spring of 26. However, they historically have not budged, and the amount they reimburse is fractions of what our daily fees actually are.
And we don't normally have a very strong negotiating position with them. And that's very true across other communities. And now we've started to see some communities starting to move away from partnering with them, but they've maintained negotiations with other vendors who have a more favorable negotiation position.
So the options are kind of limited, go to Louisville or see if we can negotiate, but that's, not optimistic that would happen.
So we would propose that it stays in place through 26 based on the current state of our existing contracts.
And then I'm sorry, I just think it's an important note that our 60 plus population is the fastest growing demographic.
Yeah.
We want and value our aging community to age in place. And it's this competing tension where, so it's also the most highly subsidized service we're providing, right? So it is, I mean, we need more time to figure something out. The answer can't be just cut it off. That would not serve our
Exactly.
community well.
Yeah, right.
And the answer can't be continue as is because we can't afford it.
So are there other municipalities around the country, that are kind of leading this challenge? How to manage it?
Well, there's certainly like the Denver option, right, which they just give residents that are seniors or youth free access, right? But you have to have funding for that, right? And so that takes away your need to negotiate with some of these organizations. But I mean, a couple of things that are like low hanging fruit that we could do is we could limit what locations, if the point of the third party memberships is to create access for lifelong health and wellness, well, maybe that's really core to what our rec centers do,
Yeah.
but isn't core to what the Boulder Reservoir does. Maybe it's not core to Scott Carpenter, but maybe it is core to Spruce. I don't know, right? And so I think those are easier things for us to negotiate in or out of a contract is location. Certainly it would be great if we had a drop dead, like this is when we walk away. It is hard in those conversations to walk away. Because you want people to have access to things.
Kind of following up with Yvonne's question, are there case studies of cities around the US that you can model after? You were saying we're very unique.
I think we're unique in a lot of ways. There are several communities throughout Colorado that have funding that's at a much higher level for recreation programs. So I'm not sure who mentioned it earlier, but a lot of taxpayers think that, and it was probably Ally, that what their taxes should go for should pay for everything. It should pay for their access to the rec centers. It should pay for everything. And the bottom line here, it doesn't. And most communities, it doesn't. Most communities have to generate revenue just like we do, but they're all at different levels. And so we are a little bit unique, and I think we're being as strategic as we can and flexible, but I do think things like a sliding scale for financial aid, things like looking at our subsidy levels or discounts are going to be really important decisions that have to be made. Because I think those that can pay, that have the resources to pay, they should be paying. I think everyone would agree on that, but it's, I think, really tough right now.
I think you're going in the right direction and everything. I like the bundling of the passes. I like all the things as long as you don't triple the cost. Like somebody like Michael who only uses North Boulder Rec, if your three rec center pass is going to triple in cost because now you're at 3 rec centers, I disagree with you. But I like the concept of the thing. And I think it's nice to be able to get people to move around a little bit, like maybe if they have access to all 3, maybe there's something interesting happening at East Boulder they wouldn't normally do. So that enhances your ability to program across all of the infrastructure, which is kind of cool. Unless it's tripling the cost. That's my only thing.
Well, it might be helpful to know that I think part of this conversation is like for the rec center memberships, certainly it's not our goal to increase where we are currently. I don't know until we do the math on everything what it actually looks like, but for someone having access to everything, absolutely that has to go up. I don't know by how much.
Yeah, so I think it's really fascinating, and I think that it gives you a lot of different options to work within the community and spread things around. Right, golf course, I think those costs should increase for sure. The reservoir, I don't go there anymore because I already think it's too expensive to go in with my family, so just as a side note. Yes, I think it's cool. I think it's, and you can really market it well and kind of get Parks and Rec out there for something that's pretty neat, so.
Great.
Yeah.
Would it be possible, given the amount of information we're gonna process in August, to get the information a day or 2 earlier than when we currently get stuff?
So that's why you have this packet now.
Oh, okay.
Because most of that information is already in there. If anything, we're gonna trim how much of it you need to look at, but all of the data, all of the high level ideas are in there already, so you have access to that. And so we'll trim it so that you can narrow your focus in August. But I unless you've asked for specific data or information that we didn't already provide, I don't think we're adding a whole lot of except for
It'll be the
costing.
cost.
It's just the numbers next to it.
And there's a whole bunch of data that we got in the last packet too, which I think is really.
Yeah.
And our team has been working hard on this for the last couple of months and assuming that you would be supportive of this conversation tonight because we know something needs to change a little bit with how we do this. So we'll be ready for you and we'll get it to you as soon as we can before that next meeting.
Great, yeah, appreciate it. I know you guys are super busy, so.
My computer died, so I don't
The
have.
next item is a matter from the department. Members of the PRAB had requested an overview of the city's response to the symptoms of homelessness in Park through our Safe and Managed Public Spaces program. I have a 13-slide overview. It is for information only. The PRAB it's not around homelessness strategy. That is the purview of city council. It's not and so it is on the board if you would like that to happen tonight or recognizing it's 9:04 and you still have matters from the board, it can be recalendared. And so that's up to you all.
And it's just an overview of the program?
Correct.
Does anybody have any, would you like to push it or would you want to push it? Should we vote on it?
Push it?
I could push it.
Push it.
We could probably do that next month, right?
No, not next month. Next month, I think we're probably pretty full up.
I mean, we can put it at the end of the study session, right? Like knowing that that's the focus.
It's like it's a 15-minute presentation.
I can send you all the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Then
we
we
can come
notes on
push
it
it,
as an
yeah.
FYI.
Yeah, all right, let's push that. I think that's a good plan. And who asked for that?
It came out of a conversation we had back in probably January, but there was a lot of interest from the PRAB at that time.
Just to learn more about the program.
Obviously, we have a lot of new faces since then.
Okay.
So just to be clear, it's not solely a study session in August. Jackson's reminding me we're going to be bringing you forward budget items. You've hopefully discussed those a ton. And so it's a simple action item. And then the breadth of the meeting, we'd love to focus just on the fees. And so that's what we're clearing the decks of other conversations. We're not doing the CIP tour. And I'll just note, these overviews, there's a lot of things that come across for calendar. The team's like, we want PRAB to know about this thing. We want PRAB to know about this thing. And the calendar often doesn't allow it. I think this item has moved several times because it's hard.
Budget season is a hard for sure.
But it would be important for you all to talk about these meeting dates that are on your, so if you use the ribbons or go to the very last page of your packet, your matter from the board, there's some conflicts with several of your upcoming meetings, and we'd like to talk about it now because both for the community and our planning, it's helpful. So as the community member mentioned earlier, Monday, September 22nd is the fourth Monday. That is the first day of Rosh Hashanah, which is a high holy day for the Jewish faith. November 24th is the start of the Thanksgiving break, and very often PRAB will recalendar that Thanksgiving meeting. Sometimes they don't, it depends. And then December 22nd, similarly, it's the end of Hanukkah. It falls over the holiday break. And so we could take those month by month and get first, I would recommend you pull, do you want to consider a reschedule? And if you do, it is most often easiest, like September, by fate has 5 Mondays. You could just default to the 5th Monday in September. So I'll give it to the board now, having set that up and.
Okay. So 9/22 being Rosh Hashanah, there is 9/29. That is the 5th Monday, which is clear of, it appears any sort of holidays. I would like to motion that we move the meeting on from 9/22 to 9/29.
Second.
Any, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, 9/22 goes to 9/29.
Just before you continue, Jenny, it is Goose Day. So,
The day of the
That
goose.
changes everything.
I mean, it is a holiday for some.
Day of the goose.
Is that the band or the?
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that we'll just revere the goose that day. We'll do a little extra something for the goose and do it on 9/29. Thank you, Ally. Perfect. And then let's look at November 24th, beginning of the Thanksgiving holiday. I agree that, let's see. And then what was the third one?
December 22nd.
December 22nd, first day of Christmas break. What is on the agenda? Do we have any agenda
We're
items
not
yet?
fully calendared out that far. We certainly will have some CIP projects. Let me just get this open.
I believe last year we skipped, did we skip a December?
We have not every year, but sometimes we consolidate items into November. Is it last year we didn't have a December meeting?
Move it up to the 15th.
No, I would say that we move November to December 1st and then skip the December meeting for the holiday break. Would be my suggestion, if we haven't really agended anything right now.
I just looked out. So we wanted to, in November, we'll have a schematic design for Barker Park. And that could be, I mean, so of the items that are on the November calendar, talking to you about nature everywhere and our work with not UNICEF, that is Child Friendly Cities. It has completely escaped me, the organization that is part of. It's through
Growing Up Boulder.
nope, well, they're a partner in it, obviously, but it's a C.
UNESCO, is that what you said?
No,
UNICEF.
this is a nationwide effort of which we are a pilot city to show how you can connect children to nature. The governing body is escaping me, and we're going to partner that with the conversation on Barker Park. That's the park at 15th and Pine that is going to be redeveloped. We wanted a community member had asked that you all calendar an update on our historic places plan. And so that is calendared for December. It is not time sensitive. Neither. So the only thing that is time sensitive in November, December is launching Nature Everywhere in the Barker Park. So you could have one meeting in those 2 months if you all design. It will likely mean busier meetings October, November, and January. But based on what I'm seeing here, I think it's feasible. Team, what am I missing?
We need to meet by December 1st for city manager role for the fee schedule.
Increases.
Crab needs to meet?
We would just want the final draft in front of them before going through it.
It doesn't require their formal approval, though. The fee schedule.
Isn't that September, didn't we say?
October.
September will be the membership structure. October would be the introduction of the fee schedule.
So a lot of the fees you would have basically finalized and approved in September, associated with all of our memberships and whatnot. Fees for just like the golf course, increasing those fees, that would be later. If we're not changing any of the structure, it's just a fee increase.
Oh, but you've got that on the November meeting. Okay.
So I think we're fine.
So then I think that we should move the November 24th meeting either to December 1st or December 8th. I like the 8th personally, just in case anybody is traveling home from Thanksgiving break and can't make it on the 1st. Does anybody have any opinions on the 8th or the 1st? First of all, is everybody okay with one meeting between November and December? Or does anybody have any comments or issues there?
I'm good with it, and I also would prefer the 8th.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a reservation. I just feel like we're obviously in the middle of a very difficult conversation right now. We don't know what other difficult conversations may arise in the next several months. I think painting ourselves into a corner now to commit to one meeting instead of two is a bit risky. My preference would be, let's move the November meeting up a week, leave the December meeting calendared, and if we can cancel it later, let's cancel it later.
I would agree with that, but let's move the December meeting up a week.
Yeah, yes, of course, we don't need to meet during the week of Christmas.
So move them both up a week.
That is my preference.
Well, then we fall on the first day of Hanukkah. On the December 15th, if that is it, then that could be a potential issue for December. We could still put it there and then decide what to do with it.
Yeah, and I think, we canceled that meeting last year. Maybe there's a chance we cancel again this year.
Okay.
Moving up in November support the fee schedule conversation. So that is definitely better for us.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, respect everyone's religion, of course, but Hanukkah is not the same as Rosh Hashanah.
All right, so I motion that we move the November meeting to November 17th. And move the December meeting to the 15th of December. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. You're in favor, say
And the September meeting to the 29th.
from the September meeting to the 29th.
Great. I don't think those need formal action. So I think if you all agree. So September is going out to the 5th. November and December are both moving up a week.
September is going to the 9/29.
Correct.
Yeah, to the fifth, yes, to the fifth.
Right, and then November 20, you said that one more time, November is going to what now?
November is going.
17th. We'll have updated calendar invites out to you tomorrow.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Thank you.
Of course it will.
Yes. All right, and then, so then from there, is there any other matters from the board? Or crab matters, any other crab matters? That's okay.
Everybody's looking at each other.
All right, then we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for all of your commitment.
Thank you.
Is it good warm? It's so warm. Good job.